This is a Etha Echoes Tales production, bringing stories to life one chapter at a time. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. My Vampire System. Chapter 1, just an old book. Don't die by falling over Quinn. A boy shouted down the hallway. Quinn carried on walking down the school corridor. Harassment had become a daily occurrence for him, but it still bothered him just as much every day, and he couldn't help himself but retaliate. Quinn stopped and pushed his glasses back up as they had slipped down from his face. He needed a new pair, and just from looking at them, you could tell they were heavily worn. The sides were covered with tape, and they didn't even fit straight on his face. Quinn then turned around and immediately gave the middle finger. I bet you don't even know how many fingers I'm holding up. The boy clenched his fist and started running towards Quinn. You level one piece of crap. When are you going to learn that you don't belong in this world? The boy then placed both of his hands together, and a green ball of light started to form. When he was only a few meters away from Quinn, the boy threw his hands forward, and the green light shot out from the palm of his hands. Quinn had nowhere to go, and the beam of light was too fast for him to dodge. All he could do was grit his teeth and bear the pain. As the light hit Quinn, his body was lifted into the air and sent flying backwards into the corridor wall. What's going on? One of the students nearby said. Are they fighting on the last day of school? A crowd had immediately formed outside as people were interested in what the commotion was about. One of the female students ran over to the damaged part of the wall to check on the student's safety. The dust started to settle, and Quinn's slightly curly black hair was coming into view. When eventually the dust all cleared up and the female saw who it was, she immediately backed away and continued her business as if nothing happened. When the female student had returned to her friends, Quinn could see that they were laughing at her. I can't believe you tried to help him. I didn't see who it was, the girl retorted with flushed cheeks. After that, Quinn stood up and picked his glasses up off the floor. Once again, one of the sides had fallen off. Damn it, not again. It was the last day of school for Quinn, and he was hoping just once someone wouldn't try anything with him. Quinn was sick and tired of it, and he wasn't the type to ignore it either. He had seen people who had chosen to keep their head down and tolerate the harassment, and their treatment was far worse than what he got. Quinn didn't bother to stay at school like the rest of the students. As he walked past, he saw people talking to each other. Some were laughing while some had tears, thinking it was the last time they would ever see each other again, but Quinn wasn't a part of any of that, and he didn't want to be. When he finally arrived home, Quinn immediately got to work. Quinn lived in a single-bedroom apartment that had just enough space to fit a single bed and desk. There was also a TV that was part of the wall, but Quinn would only use it as background noise and didn't actually watch anything. The apartment was provided to him by the government since he had no living relatives and was still only 16. On top of his bed was a single suitcase that had all his belongings neatly packed. When Quinn entered his room, he immediately pulled his drawer open, which contained a book inside. It was a large, thick book that weighed about half a kilo. The front of the book was black in color, and in the center, it had a ring with lines going off in all different directions. Let's try again today, Quinn said as he placed the book on the desk. He then immediately went to his bag to pull out a little test tube, which had a clear liquid inside. Test 112, hydrochloric acid. Let's see how it goes. Quinn then started to slowly pour the liquid out of the test tube and onto the book. So far, no reaction. Quinn then continued to pour the whole test tube onto the book, but still there was no reaction. Quinn carefully examined the book to see if there was any damage done, but the book looked the same as always. Another failure. Why won't you open? Why did Mom and Dad even have this thing? 112 times. This was the number of different ways that Quinn had tried to open the book. Not only would the book not open, but it seemed like it wasn't able to be damaged either. Quinn had tried burning the book, cutting the book, melting the book, but nothing had worked. Quinn then went to lie on his bed and turned on the TV for some background noise. He never really paid attention to what was on, but the sound of other voices made him feel less lonely. The TV was currently tuned into the news station. The peace treaty with the Dalki race has lasted for 5 years now, but officials say that tension is rising once again, and we must prepare for another war. The mention of war had always been shown on the TV nonstop since that day. 30 years ago, the human race received a visit from the so-called Dalki. They looked like humans except for their dragon-like tail and scale-like skin. They immediately demanded that the human race hand over their resources and wanted to use them as slaves. Of course, the humans decided to fight back, but they quickly found out that their modern technology was useless against them. Bullets couldn't penetrate their skin, and as for tanks, well, Dalki had airships. Every man and woman was told to fight for their planet, and that included Quinn's parents. The war went on for years, and Quinn grew up not knowing what his parents looked like. When the humans were on the brink of defeat, a select few came forward. These people had special abilities. They began sharing their knowledge of how they obtained such power in hopes of turning the tide in the war, and it worked. Even so, the Dalki were still strong, and a seemingly endless stalemate led to the peace treaty signing 5 years ago. Of course, human greed got the better of humanity, and instead of sharing these powers with everyone, the higher-ranked governmental officials decided to keep them for themselves. Only those with money were able to learn the more powerful abilities, while everyone else was left with scraps. Quinn was given nothing when his parents died. The government agreed to pay for his living accommodation while he was still in school, but that was it. When his parents died at the age of 10, an agent appeared at his doorstep and handed him a book. He was told this was the only thing his parents possessed which they passed down when they died. Why is the world so unfair? Quinn got out of his bed and started walking over to his desk. He picked up his glasses that were still slightly broken and decided he needed to fix them. He noticed that one of the lenses was slightly out of place and tried to punch it back into its frame. "Come on, just get in," he shouted as he pushed down hard. The lens suddenly smashed into pieces, and one of the shards of glass created a deep gash in his thumb. Why does the world hate me? Quinn immediately started to clean up the little pieces of glass and noticed a piece had landed on top of his book. As Quinn removed the piece of glass, a drop of blood from his thumb landed in the center of the book. The ring around the center of the book started to glow, and suddenly the book started to lift itself into the air. What the hell is happening? The book started to shine brightly and shake uncontrollably. It finally opened up and page after page was being turned. Quinn couldn't take his eyes off the shining book as if he was in a deep trance. The words written in the book weren't in any language he had seen before, but for some reason, he felt like he could understand it. When the book finally turned its last page, it started to disappear as if it was slowly turning to dust. At the same time, Quinn's vision was starting to fade. His body felt weak and his eyes slowly shut. But just before he passed out, there was a single message that he heard. "System alert. Congratulations, you have been granted the VA." Unable to maintain consciousness long enough to hear the final words, Quinn passed out. Chapter 2, Daily Quiz. Slowly, Quinn's eyelids started to lift open and his vision started to return. His head felt heavy and his body was slightly sore. As he lifted himself off the ground, he touched his head to see if he had gotten any injuries. Why does my head hurt so much? After making sure his skull hadn't split open from falling over, Quinn then went to pick up his glasses off the floor. Although there was only one lens now in it, out of habit Quinn put the glasses on. Suddenly, he felt a little disorientated and his vision was slightly blurry. He took them back off and noticed that his vision only got blurry when he put the glasses on. Quinn then immediately rushed to his desk to grab a pencil. He drew the letter A on the wall and stepped back. Quinn continued to step back until his back had hit the room wall. What but how? Quinn thought. Somehow Quinn's vision was now perfect. He had lived his whole life with terrible eyesight, but suddenly he could see clearly. Images then started to flash in his head of what had happened before he passed out, and he could think of only one thing: the book. When Quinn looked around the room, he started to panic. The book? Where the hell's the book? Quinn looked everywhere for the book, but nothing could be found. It couldn't have gone missing in such a small room, and the disappearance of it was making Quinn go mad. Maybe it's like my socks, they go missing all the time. Oh, don't be stupid. This is a book we're talking about, not a sock. Quinn then tried to think hard about what had happened just before he had passed out. He suddenly started to remember the book being lifted into the air. Then just before his eyes closed, he heard a few words. What was it? It sounded like some type of system message. Then, as soon as Quinn had said those words, a status screen had appeared right in front of his eyes. System alert user, Quinn Talen. System alert race, human. System alert, level 1. System alert, 0100 exp. System alert, HP 1010. System alert strength, 10. System alert agility, 10. System alert stamina, 10. Wow, it's like those really old games people used to play all the time. Quinn noticed that on the status screen there were more tabs on the top, but without even doing anything and just reading the tabs in his head. The screen automatically switched. System alert skills. System alert, 0 skill points available. System alert skill locked. System alert skill locked. On the skills tab, Quinn wasn't really able to see much. Everything seemed to be locked and slightly grayed out, so he quickly moved on to the next tab, which was called Shop. System alert, Shop. System alert, unlocks at level 10. Can I do anything? The last tab was the quest tab, and finally, it seemed like this tab wasn't locked behind something. System alert, main quest. System alert, reach level 10. System alert, daily quest. Drink 2 liters of water. System alert, reward 5 exp. After checking everything out that the system had to offer, Quinn had to just think about closing the system, and it did. When Quinn thought about opening it again, a screen would immediately pop up in front of him. Quinn could only think of one thing, that the book his parents had left him was an ability book. These books could often be bought at very high prices from the military or a company, and could even be obtained on the black market. The only thing was, Quinn had never heard of an ability book that disappeared and granted the user a system like this. The ability books were designed to be learnt. It wasn't something that you could pick up and instantly understand how to use. A smile started to slowly appear on Quinn's face. This was great news for him. He had always been a level 1 ability user because he could never afford to buy any ability books. Finally, he had something. The next phase was for him to test what ability he had. Fire, fire, come on, Quinn said as he threw the palm of his hand forward. Okay, next. Water, water out. Quinn did the same again, but there was no result. After trying out many different things, and all the abilities he had seen before, it turned out he was unable to perform any of them. What the hell useless thing is this? Is it really just a system ability? Quinn thought about it for a while. If it truly was like a game, then perhaps by completing the quests, he would eventually get stronger and unlock more skills. He was treating it like an ordinary ability book, and clearly what he had obtained wasn't ordinary. Usually, ability books were based around one ability. It was important for a person to select their first ability book because a regular human body would only be able to perform one ability attribute. If you got a transform ability as your first ability, you would only be able to get other abilities related to this attribute. This was the same for fire and so on. Quinn then went to open his mini fridge and started to grab the bottles of water that were inside. He immediately started downing the water bottles one by one. Damn, how much is 2 liters? My belly feels like it's going to burst. After finishing his 8th bottle of water, a new notification message appeared. System alert, daily quest complete, 5 exp has been granted. System alert, 5100. Well now, I know at least the system works. Suddenly there was a loud knock that could be heard at the door. Quinn quickly went to the door and opened it. Standing in front of him was a large, muscular, bald-headed man wearing a black military uniform. There were several medals on it, and his name written just above his chest. Sergeant Griff. Boy, it is time for you to vacate your room immediately. The vehicle has been prepared and has been waiting outside for 5 minutes already. With everything that had happened, Quinn had forgotten about what was to happen today. It's time for you to head to military school, Griff said. Chapter 3, Military School. Due to the war between humans and the Dalki, every person when they reached the age of 16 was required to go to military school for 2 years. Even though humans and Dalki were in a peaceful period, everyone knew that it wouldn't last forever. Every day there was news of one race antagonizing the other, and war felt like it could start at any moment. Quinn quickly went to the toilet before heading off with Sergeant Griff. His bladder felt like it was going to burst any second now due to all the water he drank. Once Quinn stepped out of his room into the outside world, something strange happened. A new notification screen has appeared. System alert. Your body is being hit by direct sunlight. System alert. You are affected by the sunlight. System alert. All stats will be halved while in the sunlight. Suddenly, Quinn's body felt extremely sluggish. It felt like he had just gone for a 5K run and returned. His arms and legs felt heavier, and there was nothing he could do about it. Quinn then went to check his status and saw that his stats did indeed go down by half, but it wasn't just his stats, but his HP as well. System alert, HP 55. System alert, Strength 55. System alert, Stamina 55. System alert, Agility 55. What kind of drawback is this? Quinn thought. Then a new notification appeared. System alert, you have received a new daily quest. Avoid direct sunlight for 8 hours. System alert, reward 5 exp. Quinn's mood slightly changed as soon as he saw the new daily quest. Unlike the water one, this was something he was able to do naturally just by sleeping. If the system worked the same way it did in games, then that meant once Quinn had reached 100 exp points, he would be able to level up and also level up his stats. So the more daily quests Quinn got, the better it was for him. What are you doing walking so slowly? The school will eat you alive if you carry on like that, Griff shouted. Finally, Quinn had reached a large bus which was parked just outside his house. When he entered the bus, he noticed that it was already full of students all the same age as him. He didn't recognize any of the students, though, meaning they had all come from a different school. Quinn then went to sit at the front of the bus, which was the only seat that was still available. System alert. Stats have returned to normal. As soon as Quinn had entered the bus and avoided the direct sunlight, his stats had returned to normal, and his body felt re-energized once again. Well, at least it looks like it's only direct sunlight. The students were all talking to each other in excitement. But that quickly stopped as soon as Sergeant Griff came on board. "All right, it's time for us to head to the military academy." The bus then started to move, and the students were finally on their way. The bus remained silent during the journey. Whenever a student would start to speak, Griff immediately would look in their direction, and the student would shut up. Griff didn't even have to say anything. They all knew what he wanted just by looking at him. Then, about 10 minutes into the journey, Quinn once again received another message. "System alert, a substance in the air has been detected." "System alert, you are feeling sleepy." "System alert, resistance +1." Quinn found this message quite strange, and then when he started to look around the bus, he noticed that nearly all of the students were either asleep or dozing off. Suddenly, even his own eyelids started to feel dizzy. "System alert, your resistance to the substance has increased." "System alert, resistance +1." Then the sound of loud footsteps could be heard coming towards him. As he looked up, he noticed Sergeant Griff hovering above him. "Looks like a few of you were able to resist the sleeping gas. Then we will just have to bag you." A black bag was then thrown on top of Quinn's head, and his vision now was completely covered. The gas started to slowly seep through, and Quinn managed to doze off into a nice sleep. Then the next moment, Quinn could feel a splash of cold water being chucked on his face. His eyes opened instantly, and all he could see was the green grass. He and several other students started to lift their heads to lock around them. There were currently a total of 200 students standing out on a plain, open field, but when they looked around, they were in a place that was completely foreign to them. "This is where you will spend the next 2 years of your life." The students were amazed at what they were seeing. They were currently in a city like they had never seen before. Everyone was dressed up in military uniform, and there was technology and engineering around them that was too advanced for their time. Giant robots moving crates and building machines. Flying ships and levitating trains. It was a technology that hadn't been given to the outside world yet and was kept for the military only. After the first war with the Dalki race, the humans had managed to make leaps in technological advancement. This was because they had managed to salvage equipment from them after the war, but of course, the military decided to keep most of it for themselves. When Quinn finally stopped being amazed at his surroundings, he noticed that there was something placed around his wrist. It looked similar to a digital watch, but there was nothing displaying on the screen. "That there on your wrist is your lifeline. It will identify you as a student at this military base. It will allow you to access certain areas, pay for food, and all sorts. It is your lifeline at this academy. That isn't the only thing that it will display, though. When not in use, the wristwatch will display a single number, and that number is your power level." As soon as Quinn heard those words, he gritted his teeth and clenched his fist. He thought his life might change by coming to military school, but it seemed like it was going to be the same even here. "With that, we will immediately begin the level test for you all. Good luck," Griff said with a smile on his face. Chapter 4, Ability Level. When abilities were first introduced to the human race, people quickly learned that some were far more powerful than others. With this came the introduction of the power level system. There were a total of 8 different power levels, 1 being the weakest and 8 being the strongest. These levels could also be further divided into 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 all the way to 1.9, and it was the same for each level. There were 2 ways for people to obtain abilities. When the war started with the Dalki race, people started to share their powers with the outside world. They wrote down how they obtained this power and put the information down in things called ability books. These ability books went on for sale to the public, and the military kept some of the stronger ones to themselves. Generally, ability books from level 1 to 5 were sold to the public. while giant corporations and the military kept the higher ones to themselves. The second way to obtain an ability was if you were an original. Originals were the first people who had originally discovered the powers for themselves and decided to pass it down within their family. Not all ability users chose to share their abilities to the outside world and decided to keep it within their bloodline. Originals usually had the strongest abilities that went beyond level 8. There was no way for the government to measure its power because it wasn't public knowledge. Because of these two reasons, Quinn had always been a level 1. He had no family members to support him, so he couldn't afford an ability book, and his family had no abilities themselves, so he wasn't an original. When Quinn had obtained the book, his first guess was that it was some time of an ability book. Now, after all these years, it seemed like he had obtained an ability. But he had never heard of an ability book like this before, and he didn't have a clue what power level it had given him. Quinn lifted up his hand to look at the watch, which indicated his current power level was 1. When he looked around, he noticed that everyone else's watches currently indicated the same number. Griff was currently standing in front of all the students and called names in groups of 5. These students would then be transported somewhere to take the test. Quinn was hopeful at first, thinking that he might have been able to change his ability level for once, but his mind was quickly changed after receiving a notification. System alert, you are being hit by direct sunlight. System alert, all stats will be halved. Quinn didn't even know how good 10 strength, 10 agility, and 10 stamina was, but if his eyesight was anything to go by, then it would mean it was at least the top condition of a normal human being. But right now, Quinn felt incredibly weak and sluggish. His body felt extremely hot right now, and he was sweating buckets of water. Quinn thought it was a good thing he drank a load of water beforehand. Otherwise, he would have been extremely dehydrated. "Hey, are you okay?" a stranger standing next to Quinn said. The stranger's name was Vorden. He had slick blonde hair and hazel green eyes with a chiseled face and sharp jawline. He also stood 6'2" tall, while Quinn was 5'11". This was the type of person Quinn would usually avoid at his last school, as everyone would always pay them attention, and Quinn hated attention. "If you want, can I call someone for help?" Vorden said. "It's okay, I'm just a little bit nervous about the testing," Quinn said, as he tried to ignore his tired body and stand up straight. Vorden looked Quinn up and down. Quinn was quite skinny for his age and didn't have a lot of muscle on him, and right now he looked incredibly weak. Vorden thought Quinn looked like the type of boy who would have gotten bullied at school, and it was the reason why Quinn was nervous. If he was to get a level 1 rating, most likely the same would happen here. "Well, don't be, I'm quite strong, you know. If anyone messes with you, you can come and ask me for help." Vorden smiled. Quinn didn't usually get on with the energetic, positive type of person, but Quinn found it hard to dislike Vorden. When Quinn thought about his time back at school, he realized he actually didn't get on with anyone. "The name's Vorden," Vorden said as he placed his hand out. Quinn looked at Vorden's hand. It was actually the first time in his life someone had treated him this way, but Quinn thought that would quickly change. They always did once they found out his ability level, but for once he would like to forget about all that. "My name's Quinn," Quinn said as he shook Vorden's hand. "System alert. Use of ability has been detected." "System alert. The ability has been rejected." Once the system messages appeared, Quinn looked at them strangely. At the same time, he shook Vorden's hand, and the messages came up instantly. He then noticed that Vorden still hadn't let go of his hand. Then the system repeated the message once again. "System alert. Use of ability had been detected." "System alert. The ability had been rejected." Quinn then immediately let go of Vorden's hand. The system was clearly telling him that Vorden was trying to use his ability on him. Vorden himself even had a puzzled look on his face as he stood there still. "You," Vorden said, "what is your ability?" Quinn paused, thinking for a while whether he should answer or not. In the end, he wanted to see Vorden's true reaction. "I don't have the ability." Vorden no longer had a puzzled look on his face, as if the answer had satisfied his curiosity. But before Vorden could say anything, Griff had made an announcement. "Will the students, Quinn Talen, Vorden Blade, Peter Chuck, Layla Munro, and Aaron Helly please come to the front to take your test?" Chapter 5, No Ability. Once the 5 students had heard their names being called up, each of them started to walk to the front where Griff was standing. Including Quinn and Vorden, there was another boy named Peter. Peter looked more nervous than anyone there. He would constantly look around him and couldn't stop fidgeting. His body frame was quite small, but it suited him, for he was that tall either. Then there were the 2 girls named Layla and Aaron. Layla had short brown hair and a tall figure. On her back, she was carrying a bow, which surprised Quinn, for not many people carried a weapon these days apart from a specific group of people called Pure. They were a group of people who chose to not have any abilities and used weapons instead. But they were still very rare, and Quinn had never met anyone like that in his life, only heard stories about them. Finally, there was Erin. Erin was the type of girl that turned all of the boys' heads. Her proportions were perfect, not too big, not too small, and she had beautiful, long blonde hair. The only problem was her facial expressions. Even when walking through the crowds of people, not once did her expression change. It stayed stiff and neutral. As Quinn was walking past everyone, he noticed that he didn't recognize one student there, and it seemed like the others didn't either. Quinn could only assume that this was done on purpose. No one knew who to befriend or who to look out for because currently, everyone's power level displayed 1. The group had stopped just behind another group, who were being transported to the testing area. As soon as Vorden saw the others who were in the same group, Vorden greeted each one of them with a handshake. Vorden was being very polite, so most of them accepted his greetings apart from Erin. She merely stared at Vorden's hand when he offered it out to her. Then she turned her head and looked away. "Come on, you don't have to be like that," Vorden said as he placed his hand on her shoulder. This was a big mistake. In an instant, Erin grabbed Vorden's wrist and twisted his hand. Then slowly his hand was starting to freeze and cover in ice. Everyone stopped to look at the commotion that was happening near the front. "Wow, she has ice abilities. Isn't that very rare? I would let her freeze me any day." Griff noticed the commotion and started to intervene. "Stop it, you two. If you have that much energy, then save it for the test." Erin immediately let go of Vorden's hand, and slowly, Vorden's hand started to defrost. Vorden then went back in line to stand next to Quinn. "Can you believe her?" Vorden complained. "I nearly lost my hand." "You can't just go around touching people without their permission," Quinn replied. "Yeah, I know. She's lucky I didn't wipe the floor with her just 'cause she's a pretty girl." Many people who were near the front had heard Vorden's words and had already decided to make him an enemy. If they could somehow humiliate Vorden, then maybe Erin would look the way they thought. Looking at the people around them, Quinn could tell what the others were thinking. Quinn then stepped 1 step away from Vorden, hoping that others wouldn't think the two were friends. Finally, Quinn and the others were called forward and were told to stand in a box. It wasn't really a box, but just white lines that had been drawn on the ground that was just big enough to fit the 5 of them in. There was then a hooded man who stood just outside of the box. "Send them away," Griff said. As soon as Griff gave the command, the hooded man placed both hands on the ground and the box started to light up, shining a bright purple color. Transportation magic, huh? What a rare ability, Vorden said just as the whole group suddenly vanished into thin air. The next second they were teleported to another outdoor area which looked like an empty wasteland. There was no sign of life, no trees, no nothing. Standing in front of the group was a woman dressed in a black military uniform, and by her side was another hooded man. There was not another person in sight. The woman held a tablet in her hand, and it looked like she was currently busy inputting some information. Once she had finished, she looked up at the group and started to speak. "Hi everyone, my name is Jane, and I will be in charge of your test today. Once the test has been completed, I will update your information and your score will be reflected on your wristwatches." Jane then started to look at the tablet. "Now who should we call first? Oh, it looks like we have a couple of previous level ones," Jane said as she checked the information that had been passed on from their previous schools. "Peter, would you please step forward?" The nervous, small Peter then stepped forward, and he looked even worse than before. Quinn thought he looked bad, but he looked to be in perfect condition if you were to compare the two. At least Quinn was able to stand up, whereas Peter looked like he would fall over any second now. "Would you please tell me what your ability is, Peter?" Jane asked. I don't have any ability," Peter said quietly. Suddenly, Quinn and the others understood why Peter was so nervous. Having no ability wasn't rare. Because of the war, many children had become orphans like Quinn and Peter. This meant there was no chance for them to buy an ability book. But because Peter had no ability, he was afraid of the treatment he would get from the others. "Don't be afraid, Peter," Jane said. "Here, take this." The hooded man standing by Jane's side suddenly teleported a book into his hand. Jane then handed the book over to Peter. "Wow, seriously, you're giving this to me for free," Peter said in excitement. "Thank you. Please study the book in your own free time, and when you have learned to use it, you can come back to redo the test, but for now I'm going to have to award you a level 1 power status." Even though Peter had received a level 1 power status, he didn't care, for he felt like his life could finally turn around due to the book that he had just received. "Now I believe there was another level 1 user here," Jane said. "Quinn, is it? Would you please step forward?" Quinn did, as he was told, and stepped forward. "Now, Quinn, what ability do you have?" Chapter 6 Result. Quinn thought the whole thing was ridiculous. It was quite clear to him that Jane already had all the information on him from his previous school. They knew that he never had an ability before. The problem was Quinn was struggling with deciding what to do. Before coming to military school, Quinn had done a bit of research himself. He knew that the military gave all students who had no ability an ability book. Each ability book given was the same one. It was an Earth ability book. The reason they did this was so students who didn't have an ability before would suddenly feel indebted to the military. Not only that, but the military also had a hold on nearly all of the Earth-type ability books, meaning if you ever wanted to increase your strength, you would have to be loyal to the military, and in return, they would give you more power. Before Quinn had discovered his own ability, he actually thought this was the best option for him. Even if he didn't want to join the military after 2 years, the Earth ability was handy to have. It was easy for employment because the Earth ability was useful in construction. This was where the problem came in. Quinn already having an ability meant he was unable to learn a new one. The ability book was practically useless. Not only that, but Quinn was pretty sure they would keep tabs on every student they had given the ability book to, meaning the teachers would accept him to use Earth powers the next time they saw him. Quinn took a deep breath and said, "I don't have the ability." Just like before, the hooded man standing by her side handed her a book and then handed it to Quinn. Quinn took the book off Jane at first, but then suddenly, a notification screen appeared. System alert. Unable to learn this ability. System alert. Would you like to convert the book into 10x? Quinn had somewhat expected the system to display the first message, but the second one truly had surprised him. Quinn was really tempted to take the book and use it as a form of exp, but he knew there would be questions asked later on. "I'm sorry, but I don't want it," Quinn said as he handed the book back to Jane. The students watching and the instructor stood there were both shocked. Jane hadn't experienced anything like this before. In her 5 years working as an instructor, it was the first time someone with no ability had rejected the book. "Please give me one moment." Jane then stood away from the group of students far enough so they wouldn't be able to hear anything. Yes, he says he doesn't want the ability book. What shall I do?" Jane said, speaking on her earpiece. "Let him take the test," the mysterious man on the phone said. As the man hung up, he couldn't help but think that Quinn was an interesting student. He started to look at Quinn's file, and what he had said seemed to be true. The student had no ability and didn't seem to have any relations with the group Pure. "Let's see how long you can survive in this cruel world, Quinn," the man said. Back at the testing field, Jane had finished the call with her superior and started to head back over to the group. "Sorry for waiting," Jane said. "Since you won't be taking the ability book, we will still require you to take the test, please." Quinn thought the whole thing was a joke. If Quinn truly had no ability, then they already knew what the test results were going to be. Was there really a need for him to take the test? It felt like the only reason they wanted Quinn to continue was to make himself feel humiliated and small. Eventually, then he would choose to go to the military and beg for the ability book they were handing out. "Please follow me." Jane then took Quinn a little further out onto the field where Quinn noticed that there were huge craters in the ground, burn marks, and all sorts of things. This was all done from the previous testing contestants. "Please proceed to destroy the targets in front of you as quickly as you can," Jane said. "The test will begin immediately." As soon as Jane finished talking, 3 targets popped up randomly around the wasteland. They were metal round targets with a red dot in the center. The problem was when Quinn tried to look for the targets, everything seemed like a blur in the distance. Quinn then realized that his perfect eyesight suddenly wasn't so perfect. "Is this because I'm out in the sunlight?" Quinn thought. Quinn had no choice but to slowly run up to each of the targets and hit them with his fist one by one. His time was incredibly slow, of course. There were then 2 further tests that Quinn needed to complete. The next test was a strength test where Quinn was asked to punch into a huge drum-like machine. Quinn gave it his best shot and hit the drum as hard as he could. The drum vibrated and made a small sound, eventually displaying a digital number in the center. 5, strength, Jane said as she noted it down on her tablet. When the final test had arrived, they had brought out another machine. This machine was a big circular object with many holes on its front. Once the test started, the machine fired holographic spikes at the contestants. All Quinn needed to do was avoid being hit by the spikes. The machine went up in levels and eventually got faster and shot out more spikes. In the end, Quinn managed to get hit and the test was stopped. Agility, 5, Jane said once again as she noted it down on her tablet. Quinn had heard the words from Jane's mouth, and it started to make him think if there was some sort of link to the score she had given him. The last test was a test of strength, and Quinn had scored a 5, similar to his system, which had stated he had 5 strength. Then once again, this test focused on agility and scored a 5, which was the same as his system. This meant if Quinn was to take the test at night, all of his scores would have most likely doubled. This also meant as long as he leveled up, he could always increase his score. It was as if his ability was the ability to evolve, but had some drawbacks with it as well. As expected, Jane said, Unfortunately, your current power level is a level 1. Quinn clenched his fist and went back to stand with the others. He knew that the days ahead of him as a level 1 user would be tough, but that wouldn't be for much longer. Chapter 7, Same Ability. The test continued with Layla taking the text next. She was the only one there who had a weapon on her back. The weapon she used was a bow, but it didn't look like a regular bow that people used to use a long time ago. This bow was carved using parts of a beast. It was black in color and looked almost as if the entire bow was made of gems. Even the string was made of a special material. The reason the bow looked so different was because it was what was known as a beast weapon. A bow made from the body parts of a beast. When the human race was attacked by the Dalki, our technology advanced fast by replicating their technology. With this, the humans learned the ability to travel to other planets using portals. These planets would often contain different levels of beasts. The stronger the beast was, the better weapon you could make out of it. It was the first time Quinn had ever witnessed a beast weapon before, as no one at his previous school had one. It was strange to see someone of such a young age, who has most likely never been to another planet, to have a beast weapon. Layla stood in the center of the field and waited for the test to start. Unlike when it was Quinn's turn, they waited until she was ready before starting. Quinn could already start to see a difference in treatment. When the test started, 5 targets all appeared in different areas of the wasteland. Layla immediately took out 5 arrows and placed them in her bow, shooting them all off at once in the same direction. The arrows shot out fast and strong, but then suddenly, the 5 arrows split off into their own direction, each of them heading to a different target. "What a good combo," Vorden said. "She has the ability of telekinesis, but it's quite weak, so instead she uses her ability combined with the bow to control the arrows." In an instant, all 5 of the targets were hit at the same time, and she had completed the first test. Quinn for the first time saw how useful beast weapons were. Even if you had a weak ability, you could make it strong. Quinn wasn't completely sure what his ability was yet, but even if it just increased his stats as he leveled up, then he thought about how handy something like a beast sword or something similar would be. On the strength test, Layla didn't do so well. She used her powers to try to move her fist even faster when punching the drum, but in the end, her score was only an 8. The last test, Quinn also saw her do quite badly. When the test first started, Layla tried to use her ability on the spikes coming at her. Unknown to her because they were holograms and not the real thing, it had no effect. Meaning all Layla could do was rely on her actual body to avoid the spikes. In the end, Layla ended up getting the same score as Quinn. "It looks like you have the ability level of a level 2 user," Jane said, and immediately the number 2 appeared on Layla's wrist. Quinn could tell Layla wasn't happy. She stropped back as she walked over to the group. Quinn thought the test wasn't really fair. Her ability level might be that of a level 2, but when used with a bow, Quinn felt like she could have easily beaten some level 3 or 4 users. Quinn was starting to take note that the academy really did only measure the power level of your ability, and not your fighting ability. The next person to take the test was Erin. She walked forward confidently without even looking at anyone else. She stood in the center of the testing field waiting for the test to start. Then, 5 random targets appeared across the wasteland. Immediately, she formed an ice spear and chucked it at the target, hitting it dead on. She did this one after the other at an incredible speed, nearly clearing them all just as fast as Layla did. The next test, Erin, was even more impressive. She started to gather ice in both her palms, and then, after a minute or so of gathering her power, a huge ice column was shot from her hands and hit the center of the drum dead on. The drum rang out louder than it had before, and the number kept going up until it had eventually reached 50. No wonder she's so confident, Vorden said. Quinn suddenly thought it was a good thing. The two of them didn't fight, otherwise Vorden would have been a dead man. Finally, when the last test had arrived, the instructor told her she wasn't allowed to use her ability and should just dodge. Erin had no reaction and started the test immediately. She managed to do well, moving swiftly, avoiding each spike, but eventually, the machine had gotten too fast and she ended up getting hit. Impressive, Jane said. Best results so far, power level 5. Erin continued to walk back to her group, as if she knew what she was going to get all along. Either that, or she didn't really care about the whole thing. Finally, the last person to take the test in the group was Vorden. Time to show you what I got. Wish me luck. Quinn had no clue who Vorden was talking to, but Quinn quickly realized it was him after Vorden gave a wink in his direction as he walked off to the center of the field. Could that idiot actually be strong? Quinn thought. Most of the time, people who were strong were either arrogant about their powers or kept it quiet, but Vorden was a strange person. He wasn't exactly arrogant, but more flashy. When it finally came to his turn and the test had started, everyone's mouth was left wide open at what they were seeing. On every single one of the tests, Vorden had done the exact same thing as Erin. He had used the same ability, the ability of ice, and had performed just as well. See, I told you I was strong, Vorden said as he showed the number 5 to his new best friend Quinn. Just what was Vorden's ability, Quinn thought. Chapter 8 Fate. After seeing Vorden perform well on the test, Quinn couldn't help but think about what Vorden's ability was. When Vorden went to shake his hand that time, it said that Vorden had tried to use his ability on Quinn. Yet for some reason, his ability didn't work. If Vorden's ability was ice, surely his hand would have just frozen, unless Quinn had an ability to block all abilities, but that was highly unlikely. Not only that, but straight after, even Vorden had a strange reaction and had asked Quinn what his ability was, as if he knew his ability didn't work. Then another thought came into Quinn's mind. Why was Vorden so adamant on shaking everyone's hand he had just met? If Quinn remembered correctly, Erin refused to shake Vorden's hand, but in the end, Vorden still went to touch Erin on the shoulder. At the time, it seemed like a weird thing to do, but now Quinn realized it wasn't, and everything was starting to make sense. Touching was the condition. The last person Quinn touched was Erin. It couldn't be a coincidence that both of them had the same powers, which meant most likely that Vorden's ability was the ability to copy other people's ability. It didn't work on Quinn because his ability wasn't straightforward. Quinn couldn't help his curiosity and had to ask. Hey, Vorden is your ability, Quinn whispered. Are you able to copy other people's abilities? Vorden looked at Quinn and smiled. I'm surprised you figured it out so fast. How did you know? When you shook my hand, you were surprised when nothing happened. Vorden thought Quinn was quite amazing to be able to guess something like that just from a handshake. After all, it was much more likely that Vorden had obtained the ice ability from an ability book. The power for copying wasn't available as an ability book, which meant one thing. Are you an original? Quinn asked. Vorden didn't say anything, but simply gave a wink back at Quinn, which pretty much confirmed Quinn's thoughts. Vorden was an original, a person from a family who decided to not share their abilities with the outside world. Someone who was usually able to surpass the power level of 8. Once the test had been completed, the hooded man teleported the students to the front of the academy where they would be staying. The academy was huge and the tallest building in the entire city. It was as if someone had put together 3 hotels. There were a total of 10 different teachers that were currently standing in front of the academy. In front of them were groups of students who had all finished taking the test. The students were told to wait with the teachers until all the students had finished conducting their tests. Once in a while, a group of 5 students would be teleported in front of one of the teachers. Finally, where Quinn was standing, there now was a total of 20 students. "Okay, you all need to follow me as I take you around the school," the teacher up front said. The teacher was a middle-aged man with blonde, curly hair and wore glasses. His name was Dell. While Dell walked around describing the various places of the academy, he couldn't help but smile. It looked like nothing was able to upset him. "You guys should start to get to know each other as much as you can," Dell said. "After all, the people you are with now will be your classmates." Suddenly, everyone started to get chattier with each other as they were being shown around the school, but there was something Quinn had noticed. The mid-levels were trying their best to get friendly with the higher levels, while the low levels were being completely ignored. And Quinn and Peter were the only 2 level ones in the class. Without realizing it, they had been pushed to the back of the class, and Peter was plodding along with his head held down. It seemed to have affected Peter a lot more than Quinn, but Quinn had already suspected this would happen. Suddenly, though, a familiar voice was heard calling out Quinn's name. "There you are," Vorden said. "Many people just started jumping all over me. Then all of a sudden I look to my right and you're gone. Come on, let's look around together, friend." Quinn truly thought Vorden was a strange person, but that wasn't a bad thing. Vorden then noticed Peter was on his own as well. "Come on, you come over too. Stop being a downer." Peter looked up and pointed a finger at himself. "Who else do you think I'm talking to?" Vorden said. The 3 of them continued to hang at the back of the class, while the teacher continued to tour around the school. They were shown a battle arena, where they had similar testing equipment to the field on the wasteland, as well as several square fighting platforms. They were also shown their homeroom classes, battle classes, sports rooms, and all sorts. Dell would explain a little bit about each area of the school they visited, but Quinn was uninterested in most of it until they had finally reached the library. The library here is split into 3 floors, as you can see. First-year students are only able to access the first floor. Second-year students can also go on the second floor. And finally, the last floor is only for military personnel. Quinn was interested in the library because it contained books that weren't available to the public. Here, Quinn just might find some information about his ability. He just hoped it would be on the first floor. Finally, the tour was coming to an end, as Dell stopped just outside the school's dorms. "And this is where you will be staying during your stay here. Once you have dropped off your things, feel free to explore around the academy. There will be no lessons today, so you will get to have the rest of the afternoon to explore." Each student was then handed a number on a piece of paper 1 by 1, which displayed which room they would be staying in. Quinn then noticed from the corner of his eye Vorden coming towards him. "Hey, Quinn, what room number do you have?" Vorden asked. 23. "No way you're kidding, right? I got the same number. Maybe it's fate bringing us together," Vorden said excitedly. "Maybe," Quinn replied. Meanwhile, somewhere down the hallway, 2 other students were having a conversation. "Whoa, what happened to you?" a student said, looking at his friend. "I don't know, man. Some guy just came and hit me out of nowhere and swapped room numbers." "Man, should we try to get it back?" the student asked. "Nah, if I saw his wrist correctly. It said he was a level 5. It's best if we just leave it." Chapter 9, What System? After Quinn had finished unpacking, he was free to do what he wanted for the rest of the day. It was still noon, so he had plenty of time to explore the academy and do what he wanted. Quinn was currently sharing his room with 2 people, and to his surprise, he knew both of them. One of them was Vorden, while the other was Peter. There were 3 single beds in the room, each spread out from one another, but other than that, the room was pretty empty. Students were expected to spend most of their time studying or practicing their skills. There was no time for pleasure. "What do you guys want to do then?" Vorden asked. "I'm still unpacking. You two don't have to wait for me. Do what you want," Peter replied. Peter had opened up a little to the two of them. At first, he was completely shy and hardly said a word, but slowly Peter seemed to be coming out of his shell, especially around Quinn. Peter most likely felt comfortable around Quinn, knowing that he was a level 1 ability user like himself. "I was thinking of heading to the library," Quinn replied. "That will probably be too boring for you." "Boring? I can make anything fun. Besides, I haven't read a book in." Vorden paused for a while. "I can't even remember the last time I read a book." The three of them laughed, and then Vorden and Quinn decided to head to the library together. Finally, they had arrived, and the first floor was already busy with students. Quinn noticed that there were multiple round desks spread out where students were sitting, and in the middle of the desk was a glowing orb. "Ah, you're probably wondering what that orb thing is in the middle, are you?" Vorden asked. "It looks like they don't have them at public schools. If you touch the orb, then it allows you to create a space. In that space, only those people who have been invited can be heard. This way people are able to talk and chat as much as they want while not disturbing others. Technology sure has come a long way." Quinn and Vorden then chose a table that had two other people sitting on the other side. Just as Vorden had said, Quinn could see the two talking, but couldn't hear a word of what they were saying. The orb seemed to only have a range of the table, though. Once you left the table, others were able to hear you as normal. Quinn went looking around the library and picked out as many books as he could about abilities. Most of them describe what different types of abilities the world had. Vorden wasn't too bothered and decided to just select a random fiction book to read. The two sat at their tables while Quinn started to flick away. After reading several books, Quinn had discovered nothing new. He already knew about most of the abilities written in the book, but not one of them mentioned an ability like Quinn's. Vorden had been keeping a close eye on Quinn and noticed the type of books he had been picking out. "What's with all the books? Are you looking for something in particular?" Quinn thought about it for a while before giving Vorden an answer. Vorden wasn't the brightest person when it came to academics, but he was quite knowledgeable about abilities, it seemed. He would have to be because of the type of ability he had. "I was trying to decide what ability to get, since I turned down the school's offer." "Oh, right, I forgot about that. I thought you might have been one of those pure members who hate abilities. Turns out you just didn't want to be a dog in the military," Vorden replied. "Well, is there anything specific you're looking for?" "Not really. I have no clue. There was one that said something interesting, though. Have you ever heard of an ability that is weaker in sunlight?" Vorden suddenly started to laugh out loud. "What are you, crazy? I've never heard of something like that. Abilities are something our bodies learn. Sure, some people have limits and can't learn stronger spells or can do less than others, but for one to get weaker because of the sun. Sounds like you're a vampire or something." Quinn felt a little embarrassed by Vorden's reaction. Of course, Quinn knew this would be the normal reaction when asking something like this, but it was true. As long as Quinn was in direct sunlight, all of his stats would weaken by half. Quinn continued to look around the library to see if there was anything else he could find. He had finally gone through every single one of the ability books he could find, but there was nothing. Quinn then looked up at the floor above where there were some second-year students. "Maybe there's something up there, but I can't imagine what the academy would do to me for breaking the rules," Quinn thought. As Quinn continued to walk around the library, he had eventually ventured into the fiction section, and his eyes were drawn to something. A specific title of a book named "The Truth About Vampires." Quinn took out the book and gave it a quick look. Vampires were things of fairy tales, myths even. Even when people started to come out with powers, there was not one person who came out claiming to be a vampire. Quinn couldn't help himself but start to read the book. It was a long shot, but maybe he would find something he could relate to. After reading and skimming through the book, Quinn found most of it was useless. A lot of the things that vampires didn't relate to him at all. Vampires were required to eat human blood. Some could transform themselves into bats and cast illusions. While others were incredibly skilled with the sword and hypnosis, Quinn had none of these things. The only thing he could relate to in the book was being weaker in the sun. Eventually, Quinn decided to close the book and call it a day. It didn't seem like he was going to find anything from the first floor of the library. As soon as Quinn closed the book, though, a familiar sound was heard. Ding. You gained more knowledge about the system. 10 exp received. 15 100 exp. It couldn't be, could it? Chapter 10, New Quez. Quinn stared long and hard at the message and reread it multiple times. It couldn't be. Did I get exp from reading that fantasy book? Quinn immediately had to test it out. After reading several different books about abilities, not one had given him exp, but for some reason this book did. Quinn then immediately picked up another fantasy story, one about dragons, this time titled Reincarnated into a Human. He did the same as before and skimmed through most of it, but made sure to read the crucial parts. Then when he closed the book, there was no reaction. This, of course, was expected. Then Quinn wanted to test another thing out. He picked up another book that was also about vampires and did the same. When he closed the book, though, the same thing happened. The system had no reaction at all. In the end, Quinn theorized that, after reading all the books, he had gained so much knowledge about abilities that the system had rewarded him for it. Maybe the system had just given a delayed message. He couldn't believe that the book about vampires was somehow related to his system. Well, he didn't want to believe it. When Quinn finished checking things out at the library, he noticed that Vorden had disappeared from the table and was no longer in the library. He must have gotten bored and gone somewhere else. Quinn looked outside the window and noticed the sun was starting to set. He had been in the library for a total of 6 hours so far, and the time had gone flying by. Then, when Quinn was just about to leave, he received another message from the system. System alert. Daily quest has been completed. System alert. Avoid direct sunlight for 8 hours. System alert. 5 exp has been awarded. System alert. 2100 exp. Quinn had finally completed his second daily quest. The ride from school had taken them around 2 hours, and with the time spent indoors and in the library, Quinn was able to complete the task with ease. Each time Quinn received an announcement, he got a satisfying feeling seeing the number go up closer to 100. He couldn't wait to see what would happen once he had reached the goal. His best guess would be a level up. After all, the system even stated that he couldn't use his shop feature until he was at least a level 10. The only thing Quinn wished for at the moment was a quicker way to level up. With just the 2 daily quests a day, it would take days until Quinn reached level 2. Right now, though, there wasn't much he could do but go by his everyday life as normal. As Quinn left the library, he decided to head to the battle arena. There was a theory that he wanted to test out. But as he was walking through the school hallway, he could see a kid being pushed up against the wall by another student. The boy on the wall looked like he had already been hit a few times and had markings on his face. So it started already, Quinn thought. Quinn managed to catch a glimpse of the boy's wristwatch and saw that the number on it indicated that it was a 1.2 power level. Quinn was quite surprised at this, as the person doing the bullying was quite weak himself, which was a rare occurrence. The only people he would be able to bully were people who had a power level of one like Quinn or Peter. That's when Quinn suddenly realized who was up against the wall. It was in fact Peter. Quinn didn't recognize him at first because his face was turned the other way. Quinn was debating with himself whether or not to get involved in the first place. He hated bullies more than anything. They had ruined his school life, and it seemed like soon he would be a target as well. Of course, Quinn also wanted to test out his current strength, and he had found the perfect guinea pig. The student in front of him was only at a power level of 1.2, so there was a high chance he could win. The student lifted his fist again to give Peter another punch. "You think you can just bump into me like that and say sorry?" he shouted as he swung his fist. Then, as Quinn was walking past, he pretended to fall over and bumped into the student, causing him to fall off balance and miss. "Quinn," Peter said as he looked up. "What the hell was that for?" the student said as he looked at who had just pushed into him. The student then immediately looked at Quinn's watch, and suddenly the confidence in him grew. "What the hell is a level 1 piece of rubbish like you doing? I was waiting to see how long it would take for someone like you to appear. It seems like I lost a bet with myself. I thought it would at least take a couple of days." "And what are you going to do about it?" Peter was starting to feel slightly worried about Quinn. He knew at the test site that Quinn had no abilities while the student he was facing did. Peter thought they might stand a chance if the two of them fought together, but Peter, in the end, was too afraid. He had been hurt his whole life and didn't want to be hurt anymore. This was just how the current world worked. The people at the top with the strongest powers bullied the weaker ones, and in turn, they bullied the even weaker ones. It was the first time the student had ever met someone weaker than him, and suddenly all the pain he had experienced, he wanted someone else to feel it too. That way he didn't feel like he was at the bottom of the food chain. Quinn then noticed that the student had both of his hands held behind his back, as if he was preparing something, and the next thing that happened confirmed his thoughts. An ability has been detected. Initiating battle mode. New quest has been given. First fight, power level 1.2. Win the fight to gain 50 exp. Suddenly, Quinn had a huge grin on his face. This was how he was going to level up faster. Chapter 11, New Skill. The student stood opposite. Quinn was still holding his hands suspiciously behind his back. Even without the help of the system, Quinn could tell the student was obviously hiding his ability. "Come on, what happened to your big balls?" the student said. "I think you're playing with them behind your back," Quinn replied. That immediately angered the student, which was what Quinn was going for. "You weak piece of garbage." The student came charging forward and slashed his hand out at Quinn. Luckily, Quinn's reflexes were fast, and he managed to lift his arm in time to block the attack and move back a little. However, the student's hand managed to slice right through the skin of Quinn's arm and caused blood to be drawn. "Damn it," Quinn said. System alert, HP 810. Quinn looked at the student who now had his hands out in view. The student had a transformation ability that was limited to only his hands. They caused them to slightly resemble a tiger claw and hardened his fingernails. Although Quinn was able to block the attack in time, the claw managed to still rip through his skin. Is the system saying if I take 4 more attacks like that, I'm dead? Suddenly everything became a little bit more serious for Quinn. The stinging pain he was feeling on his arm was real, and this was a real fight. The game-like system had caused him to take things a little too easy, but he was quickly reminded that this wasn't a game. The student then immediately started to charge at Quinn once again with his claw-like hands. As the student swung his right hand, Quinn managed to duck and throw a punch of his own into the student's stomach. "What the hell, this guy hits hard," the student thought. The student didn't quit there, though, and decided to strike at Quinn's open back, causing another claw mark to appear. System alert, HP 610. "Shut up, I know," Quinn shouted as he lifted the student using both of his hands by the legs and threw up against the side of the wall. How did Quinn manage to pick him up like that? Peter thought. They're roughly about the same size and he threw them with ease. Does he really not have an ability? Quinn didn't stop there, though. It was important for him to teach people like them a lesson. Otherwise, they would just come back for more. Quinn needed to show him to never mess with him again. Quinn ran up to the student who was lying on the floor and kicked him in the stomach with full force. The kick was so hard that it caused the student to cough up a little bit of blood from his mouth. System alert. Congratulations, quest has been completed. System alert. 50 exp received. System alert. 7,100 experience points. Is he dead? Peter asked. Then the student suddenly started coughing some more. No, but if he attacks us again, he's going to wish he was. Quinn was actually quite relieved. He didn't know what the punishment was at the academy for killing another student, even if he explained that he hadn't attacked first. He also didn't want the burden of death on his shoulders at such a young age, so he was happy when the system had rewarded him with experience points without having the need to kill the student. Then suddenly, another message appeared. System alert, additional quest reward. System alert, skill unlocked. Inspect LV1. Excitement started to fill Quinn's mind as he had finally received his first skill. Quinn was hoping maybe this would help him figure out what type of ability he had, but the name of it didn't sound too promising. Inspect, so maybe it can tell me the weaknesses of my opponents, Quinn thought. Quinn then decided to test his new ability out and looked at Peter, who was standing next to him. Now was the next problem. Quinn had no idea how to use his skill, but the moment he started thinking about the skill, inspect, the skill had activated on its own, and a screen had appeared right next to Peter. System alert name, Peter Chuck. System alert race, human. System alert ability, none. System alert, HP 35. System alert, blood type A+. Quinn looked at the information that had been given to him, and it seemed like there were some sections blanked out. Quinn could only assume this was because the level of his skill was still only at level 1, but the information it did give him was quite handy. It told Quinn what type of ability they had, which would be very useful in a fight. It also told Quinn how much health they had. However, there was one bit of information that Quinn found strange, and that was the blood type. It was weird for the system to give him information about such a specific thing, and Quinn also wondered how on earth would this ever help him in the future. Quinn then went up to the student, who was still laying on the ground in pain, and used the inspect skill on him. System alert name, Kyle Main. System alert race, human. System alert ability, transformation. System alert, HP 18. System alert, blood type B. Checking the status of Kyle made Quinn learn a few new things. The information he was given about the ability only gave him the type of ability. There were hundreds of different transformation abilities, so I wasn't able to pinpoint it. The other thing was the HP. It looked like for his victory, he only needed to bring down the student's HP to 1, but Quinn still didn't know if 0 meant death or not. It could also just mean the person had been knocked out. Right after inspecting Kyle, though, Quinn had received another notification. System alert, optional quest has been granted. System alert, drink the blood of your victim to absorb a stat point. What the is this thing crazy? Quinn thought. Even if it gave him a stat point, there was no way he was going to drink someone else's blood. The very idea of it made Quinn feel sick. For a brief moment, though, Quinn looked to the ground, where Kyle had spat out some of his blood. Maybe a little bit wouldn't hurt. Quinn, you're going crazy, stop it. Come on, let's go, Quinn said to Peter. The two of them continued to walk down the hallway, but while doing so, Peter noticed that Quinn kept turning his head to look at Kyle, who was still on the floor. He must be worried about him. Quinn's a nice guy after all, Peter thought as he smiled. But what he didn't realize was that Quinn wasn't looking at Kyle at all, but was looking at Kyle's blood that was on the ground. Chapter 12, A Second Test. As the two continued to walk down the hallway, Quinn started to feel a strange surge through his body. "Hey, shouldn't you go to the doctor? I'm sure they have a healer who can patch that up," Peter asked. "Yeah, thanks. I'll head there now," Quinn replied. "You don't have to come with me. It will be a busy day tomorrow, so why don't you head back to the dorm?" Although Peter was worried about Quinn, Peter didn't want to stick in the halls for much longer where other students were able to see him. Quinn could see that Peter was hesitating about what to do. "Look, don't worry. Vorden just went to the bathroom. He'll be back any second, so don't worry about it." With that, Peter quickly rushed off and headed back to the dorms, making sure to cover up his wristwatch most of the time as well. He didn't want another incident to happen again. Quinn, on the other hand, immediately rushed to the nearest boys' toilet just down the hall. When he entered the toilet, he immediately started to look at his arm where Kyle had scratched it with his claws. While looking in the mirror slowly, Quinn could see that his arm was healing. Though it looked slow, in reality, it was incredibly fast. For someone to be able to actually witness his skin scabbing over and healing was an amazing sight. Quinn had actually felt something strange happening to his body during this process, and he noticed it when he was talking to Peter. It was why Quinn was trying to do everything in his power to get Peter to leave him alone. If Peter was to see something like this, there was no doubt that Peter would think he had an ability. Quinn waited a few minutes and opened up his status screen. It was as he thought. His HP slowly regained as well. System alert, HP 810. Eventually, the wound on his arm and back had completely healed up, and only the rips in his shirt could be seen. System alert, HP 1010. System alert, your HP had been healed. System alert, your hunger has grown. Just when Quinn received the two messages, Quinn suddenly started to feel hungry. Does this mean the system uses food to heal my wounds? It makes sense. The energy has to come from somewhere, Quinn thought. The pain in Quinn's belly was very little. It was as if he had just missed breakfast or something. When Quinn had the chance, he would get a quick bite to eat. Before Quinn headed back to the dorms, there was one more thing he wanted to do, and that was to head to the training room that they had been shown while touring the school. It was getting late, and the students had an early start in the morning, so most of the students had already returned to their dorms. This meant it was the perfect chance for Quinn to head to the training room without anyone seeing him. Quinn had finally reached the training room in the academy. It was a large, oval, dome-like building with a huge, empty space in the middle. At the edges of the room were rows and rows of technological equipment. There were giant mech robots, shooting targets, and things Quinn had no idea what they even did, but what Quinn wanted to see most of all was the power-level testing equipment. Inside the training center, Quinn had also spotted the same machinery that was used at the testing field. When Quinn entered, the room was completely empty of people as he thought. Quinn walked over to testing equipment while walking past all the other sorts of machinery, and finally he stopped just in front of the drum-like machine. This machine was the same machine that tested the user's strength. Layla had also come to the training room late at night, and before Quinn had entered, she had been testing out her bow and arrow skills, practicing. She always practiced at night when she was nervous, and she couldn't help but worry about tomorrow. That was when she suddenly heard the doors open to the training room. Being her shy usual self, she immediately hid behind one of the giant robots. Suddenly, she saw the student walk over to her direction, then she noticed something. Isn't that the boy that I took the test with? If I remember correctly, he had no ability, Layla thought. Layla continued to watch Quinn as he approached the large drum. Here it goes, Quinn said as he prepared his fist. He swung his fist back and prepared to hit the drum as hard as possible. A number appeared on the drum, and the number slowly started to rise until it eventually stopped at 10. Seems like I was on the mark, Quinn said. Quinn had a theory after hearing his test scores that his status screen stats also matched the equipment the school used. Although this was only a theory, Quinn wanted to test it out for himself. Layla, who had been watching from behind one of the robots, also noticed Quinn's new score. 10, didn't he get 5 last time? Was he hiding his ability? That score's higher than my score. Layla was suddenly interested in the mysterious student and continued to watch him. Quinn next went to the hologram spike machine. Last time, Quinn managed to last 10 seconds against the machine before it got too fast for him to dodge the attacks. If his theory was right, he should at least be able to last 20 seconds now that his stats were no longer halved. Quinn started the test, and when the test eventually ended, he got exactly 20 seconds. It looks like I was right. With Quinn having confirmed his results, there was nothing left for him to do but head back to the dorm and wait for the next day to start. Meanwhile, Layla, who had been watching this whole time, had seen everything. She couldn't understand why a student would hide his strength in school. A low power level meant you were a target for others. Layla only had one thought while she looked at Quinn. Interesting. She decided from now on she would keep a close eye on Quinn. Chapter 13, School Hierarchy. The next day at 8:00 a.m., the students were woken up by the sound of an alarm in the dorm rooms. It was the signal for everyone to wake up and get dressed. Once everyone was ready, they were to head down to the canteen together for breakfast. When Quinn woke up, he was greeted with a nice surprise from the system. System alert, you have completed your daily quest. System alert, avoid direct sunlight for 8 hours. System alert, reward 5 exp. System alert, 75-100. The daily quest had reset at midnight, and Quinn had slept for 8 hours, rewarding him with his exp. Quinn was pleased as this meant he would easily be able to gain 5 exp without having to go out of his way. Then a rumbling sound came from his belly. I'm hungrier than I usually am for some reason. Maybe my body really did use up a lot of energy in that fight, Quinn thought as he headed down to the canteen. The canteen was a large hall, but it was quite plain. In fact, while walking around the school, Quinn noticed most of the school was plain. Single white walls, no picture frames or anything, just windows now and again. It was the sleek, modern, clean look that the world had taken. The canteen was then filled with large tables that were able to seat 3 people on each side of the table. As soon as Quinn entered, though, he noticed something straight away. There were no set seats in the canteen, meaning students were free to sit where they liked. This straightaway led to a divide in the school. The low levels sat next to the low levels, and the high levels sat with the high levels. When Quinn was waiting in line with Peter and Vorden, they noticed a student come late into the queue. He walked past most of the students and eventually cut into the line ahead of the others. Not one person said a word, and the simple reason was he was a higher power level than them. Quinn hated these types of actions, but right now there was nothing he could do. Once the 3 of them got their food, they started looking for a place to eat. Why don't we go over there? Vorden pointed at an empty spot. Are you sure, Vorden? Peter asked. That's a level 1 area. You don't have to sit with us if you don't want to, right, Quinn? Yeah, don't force yourself, Quinn replied. Quit talking nonsense, you two. We're friends. I don't care about this stupid power level hierarchy going on. The three of them then went to sit down with the other lower levels on a table. The area slowly started to fill up, but not one other person had decided to sit on their table. There was a simple reason for this. They were scared of Vorden. They could see his high power level, and the other low levels wanted to stay away. As soon as the food was put on the table, Quinn started to dig in straight away, eating everything that was given to him, even the bits he usually didn't like. "Hey, if you're not going to finish that, do you mind if I take it?" Quinn asked. "Sure, go ahead," Peter said. Quinn not only ate all of his food, but also everything the other two had left behind as well. Not only that, but Quinn had grabbed 8 bottles of water as he wanted to finish his quest as soon as possible. He noticed last time when he was in the sun, he sweated more than usual, and thanks to the water he drank beforehand, he didn't feel as dehydrated. If they were to go outside again then, this would be a big help to Quinn. "For a skinny guy, you sure did pack down all that food," Vorden said. Although Quinn had clearly eaten a lot, for some reason he still had a little bit of hunger that wouldn't quite go away. Luckily, it was bearable and didn't distract him too much. System alert, a daily quest has been completed. Drink 2 liters of water. System alert, reward 5 exp. System alert, 80-100. Quinn was now only 20 points away from leveling up, and he would soon see what benefits that brought him. Then Quinn suddenly remembered that he had learned the inspect skill yesterday and decided to use it on Vorden. System alert, HP 1010. System alert race, human. System alert ability, none. System alert blood type, O. Quinn paused for a second as he read over what he was seeing. For some reason, the system was stating that Vorden had no ability. "Hey, Vorden, can you still use Aaron's ice powers at the moment?" "Wow, I didn't know you were so interested in me," Vorden said as he rubbed the back of his head. "Actually, my ability resets every day and I haven't touched anyone today. Besides you two, of course, but you two are duds for my ability." With breakfast over, it was time for them to head to class. On the way there in the middle of the hallway, Peter and Quinn managed to spot Kyle. Kyle looked like he was in top condition and had completely healed. As he walked past, though he made sure to avoid eye contact. "Do you think he'll tell the teacher what happened?" Peter whispered. "No, I doubt it. It's embarrassing for him to admit he was defeated by someone weaker than him. Plus, it will only make him a target if people find out." It was time for the first class of the day, and they needed to head to their tutor rooms together. Their teacher for the day was Dell, who was the same person who had shown them around the school. The students took their seats, and just like in the canteen, people chose to sit next to those with the same power levels, all but Vorden, of course. Vorden decided to sit at the back of the class with the level 1s and 2s, and also chose to sit in between Peter and Quinn. Immediately, the other students started to talk. "What does he think he's doing, sitting with those bottom feeders? I saw he sat with them in the canteen as well. Won't this cause a problem for the hierarchy at school? Won't the second-year students start to do something?" "Yeah, if he keeps breaking the rules, then they will definitely step in." The difference in treatment wasn't just a school thing, it was a society thing as well. The higher power level you had, the better job and more pay you could earn. The more support you would get from the government, while the rest were forgotten about. The ones at the top didn't have a problem with this, of course. The lower power levels would do anything they asked just to obtain a new skill from them, hoping one day they could increase their power level, and anyone who tried to upset this were quickly silenced. It was the whole reason why the pure group existed in the first place. To fight against this system, and it was also why they were treated like terrorists. Dell started his lecture, which was about the introduction of the school and the Great War. When we were losing the Great War against the Dalki race, that was when they had come forward. We call them the originals. This was the first time the whole world had been introduced to abilities. Unknown to all of us, they had kept these abilities for themselves for hundreds of years, only passing it down to their family members. Thanks to them, they shared their abilities with others of the human race, but not all of them, of course. When we talk about an original, we are either talking about the founders of the ability or a group that decided to not share its abilities to the rest of the world. Del then suddenly had a serious look on his face. Although we are currently in a time of peace, who knows when the war will start again, and that is why you are here. Once the class had finished, it was time for the students to take a break. Vorden, Quinn, and Peter headed outside to grab a snack. As soon as Quinn stepped outside, though, the usual message had appeared. System alert, all stats have been halved. The three of them sat by a nearby bench, and Quinn once again felt weak. "Hey, are you all right? You look sick again," Vorden asked, "and you're sweating like crazy." "Yeah, I just get hot easily," Quinn replied. The three of them continued to talk about useless things and the experiences they had at school, until suddenly a group of 6 male students appeared in front of them. Each of them wore a black arm badge, indicating that they were second-year students. "Looks like the rumors were true," one of the second-year students said. "We have some business to discuss with you three. Do you mind coming with us?" Chapter 14, Unwritten Rules. Quinn, Peter, and Vorden were being escorted by the second-year students to a separate part of the school. The school was split into different sections, and the second-year building was separate from the first years. This meant the second-year students didn't really interact with the first-year students. "Shouldn't we just run?" whispered Peter. "It might just make the situation worse. If they were going to do something to us, they would have waited until we were on our own." Quinn replied. "It seems like they did this in public intentionally, as if to make a statement to all the other low levels." After walking for a while longer, they had eventually arrived at their destination. It was down one of the sides of the second-year buildings. There were a few second-year students who were walking past, but the place was relatively quiet. Sitting down just outside of the building on the staircase was a tall man with brown hair wrapped in a ponytail. "We brought them here as you have asked, Mono," one of the second-year students said. "You guys can leave," Mono replied as he stood up from the staircase. The second-year students did as they were told and quickly left them to be on their own. It seems there have been rumors going around of a high-tier student hanging around with a bunch of low-tier students. Quinn then noticed Mono's wristwatch, which had the number 6 written on it. "Is it against the rules?" Vorden asked. Mono started to laugh. "Not quite, but there are some unwritten rules of the academy." Mono then walked over to Quinn. "You see, the moment you start treating this trash like they are useful to society, they start to get a big head." Now that Mono was close enough to Quinn, Quinn was able to use his inspect skill, but when he tried casting it, the status screen that appeared was blurry. It looked like the status screen itself was melting, and all the information was unreadable. "Is it because I'm out in the sun?" Quinn thought. "Look at this scum," Mono said. "I'm only a few feet away from him, and there isn't even an ounce of fear in his eyes. You know, I'm happy that the war started because it got rid of people like you, and only the strong survived." Quinn's blood started to boil. He hated the war and how it had taken everything away from him, including his parents. He no longer cared if he was going to take a beating or not. All he wanted to do was punch Mono in the face right there and then. At this distance, even if Quinn's punch was slow, it should still hit. Quinn couldn't hold in his anger any longer and threw out a punch, but before Quinn's punch was even thrown out fully, Mono had already taken a step back, causing Quinn's fist to hit the air. Vorden then took this chance to grab onto Mono. However, once again Mono had moved before Quinn had even started his action, causing Vorden to grab nothing. You think I'm going to let someone touch me whose ability I don't even know, Mono said. I didn't come here to fight you guys. Today was just a warning. There are some people in this school that not even the military can touch, and if you continue acting this way, they will get involved. With that, Mono headed back up the stairs and into the second-year building. Do you think he's serious? Peter asked. I know at school they didn't like this type of stuff, but it seems even worse now that we're in a military school. Why don't the teachers do something to stop it? Because it works in their favor, Quinn replied. The strong bullying the weak causes the weak to go on the path to find more power. But if you were weak to begin with and don't have the family backing to help you, where would you go to get this power? The military, Vorden answered. Exactly, the teachers and the school don't do anything because it benefits them. After experiencing hell for 2 years, your mind will have been broken down. You would do anything to seek power and protection, and the military can offer that for you, Quinn said. Quinn then looked at Vorden. It might be best if we comply with their wishes and go our separate ways for now. Why should I listen to them? Vorden snapped back. The outburst surprised Quinn, as Vorden was strangely against his suggestion. Look, I understand, Vorden, that you might think you are helping me and Peter, but maybe you don't understand because you've never been powerless like us. When we break their rules, they won't go for you. It will be me and Peter they will go for. Quinn hated saying this to Vorden. After all, Vorden was the first person who had a high power level who didn't discriminate between people, and so far Vorden's presence had helped. Whenever Quinn and Peter walked around the higher levels, did nothing to them because of Vorden. But this had only attracted bigger fish, something that Vorden and Quinn couldn't handle, at least, not yet anyway. Fine, have it your way, Vorden said with anger as he stormed off back to the dorm building. Maybe we should have explained it to him better, Peter said. No, it's fine, it's better this way, Quinn replied. Although it looked like Vorden had stormed off in anger due to Quinn's words, that wasn't true at all. Vorden was angry at the whole situation at the school. Even here, it seemed like people were telling him how he should live his life, who he could, and who he could not hang out with. Vorden also didn't want Quinn to get hurt, so he knew it was the right choice. But Vorden wasn't going to just let these people get away with trying to control his life. Vorden was going to go after them all. Chapter 15, Finding My Next Heart. Layla had been tracking Quinn and the others for a while now. She was even there when Quinn was busy dealing with Mono. Although she didn't plan to help out or anything, she was just amazed that Quinn was able to attract so much attention in one day. The only thing that Layla was confused about was why did Quinn's punch seem so weak and slow? From the looks of things, it seemed like Quinn really did want to punch Mono, but that definitely wasn't his best from what she had seen at the training center. After Vorden had stormed off, Peter and Quinn decided that it would be best that they head back to class for their next lesson. They walked for a while, but just before they got back to the first-year building, a group of first-year students were standing in front of the staircase. There were 3 of them in total, and on their wristwatch they had a power level between 2 and 2.5. What are we going to do? Dan asked for 50 credits by the end of this week. One of the boys said. I know, why did they have to pick on us? Just 'cause we're weaker than him. Another boy replied. Credits were the school's and city's currency system. Even though they were at military school, the rest of the city functioned as normal. There were still restaurants and shops, and even fun activities and games to play all around the city. If you wanted to do these things, you would have to pay with credits. Students received free food while at the school, but they also received a daily amount of 10 credits that would be sent to their wristwatch. The students were able to get more credits by performing well on missions, school activities, and rewards. Peter and Quinn continued to walk past the boys to head the class. That's when one of the boys called out to them. "Wait, stop right there, you two," the boy shouted. Peter stopped immediately, while Quinn carried on walking. "Hey, are you listening? I said stop," the boy said. Then another boy immediately got in front of Quinn and pushed him back to where Peter was standing. Quinn was hoping another incident wouldn't occur at least while out in the sun. If he got inside the building just in time, then he thought he would have had a fighting chance. "I think I might have just solved our credits problem. You must be the only level ones in this whole school," the boy said. "Hand over 10 credits each and you can go inside." "But that's all the credits we have," Peter complained. "Look, I don't want to do this, but if I don't, then my arse gets beat. Hand over the credits now." Peter looked at Quinn with hope in his eyes, perhaps thinking that Quinn might have been able to do something like last time, but after trying to hit Mono, he knew he would have no chance. Besides, these were level 2s. Even at full strength, he might not be able to beat them. Quinn decided that it would be better off to just hand over the credits anyway. It was better than losing a fight and forcing the credits over. Just then Quinn received another system message. "System alert, a new quest has been given." "System alert, a power level difference of 2 has been detected." "System alert, additional X will be awarded." "System alert, defeat the student known as Riley." Suddenly, Quinn wanted to test out his chances. The idea of gaining additional exp and leveling up even further became really attractive to him, but Quinn wouldn't let his greed win him over. Right now, there were 3 level 2 power users, but the system had only asked him to defeat one of them. The first thing Quinn needed to do was get inside so he could use his inspect skill and find out which one was named Riley. Right now, if Quinn used it outside, it would only appear as a blur. In the end, Quinn decided to hand over the 10 credits. He placed his watch on the other boys, and the credits were transferred over. Peter ended up doing the same, and the 2 of them were allowed to enter the building. "Hey, that was a great idea, man," one of the boys said. "Should we just stay out here until we find someone weaker again?" "What?" Quinn said in his head. He was hoping that once they had paid them, the boys would enter the building, but it looked like they were going to hang outside for a while. Quinn suddenly stopped and waited. "What are you two doing? Scram unless you want an ass-kicking," a boy said. Then Quinn clenched his fist and shouted, "Riley." All 3 boys turned their heads at the same time, but not one of them replied. Quinn's bad luck continued, but he had one more plan to find out which one of them was Riley. "If you pull this sort of thing again on me, Riley, you're dead," Quinn said. Suddenly, the boy standing in the center of the 3, with red hair, got up and shouted, "What the hell did you say to me, you little punk?" "Run," Quinn shouted. Like a bolt of lightning, Peter and Quinn ran as fast as they could to their next class. "What did you do that for?" Peter asked. "I just wanted to annoy them a little." Peter couldn't help but think Quinn was a little mad, but he liked the fact that Quinn didn't seem to take crap from people stronger than him and kind of looked up to him a little. Once they were just outside their class, Quinn opened up his status screen to check if the quest was still active. Good. Even though Quinn was now away from Riley, it seemed like the quest was still active, and Quinn would get the exp as long as he completed it at any time. And now he knew which one was Riley, and who his first target would be. "You're going to help me level up." Chapter 16, A New Look. Classes for the day had finally finished. Since it was the first day, most of the classes were just introductions, and about what they would learn during their time at the school. Peter and Quinn did their best to avoid most of the other students for the day, and it seemed like after everything they had been through, they weren't going to get into any more trouble. Once classes had finished, it was time to go for dinner. Quinn still had this hunger in his stomach, so he was looking forward to dinner more than usual. This time, Quinn and Peter both sat on their own at a table in the low-level area. Then Peter started to look around the room as if he was trying to spot someone. "I don't see Vorden anywhere. Do you think he's okay?" Peter asked. Quinn then scouted around the room, and he too couldn't see Vorden at the canteen. "I wouldn't worry about it too much. Trust me when I say this, but he is a lot safer than us at this school." The two continued to eat, and once they had finished dinner decided to head back to their dorm room. To their surprise, Vorden was already in the dorm room on his own, lying on his bed. When the two of them closed the door behind them, Vorden lifted his head and immediately smiled at Peter and Quinn. "Hey, I've been waiting for you two for a while now," Vorden said as he got off the bed. "I wanted to say sorry about earlier. I wasn't angry at you guys, but just at this whole situation." When Vorden got up from the bed, Quinn noticed a slight mark on the side of Vorden's face. It was a little red and a little swollen. "What happened to your face?" Peter asked. "Oh, this," Vorden said as he touched the marking. "I got into a little scuffle of my own, but don't worry, I didn't lose. You don't have to worry about me, I'm strong." Then suddenly, a loud growling noise was heard in the room. Peter and Vorden immediately looked at Quinn, whose face had gone bright red. "Sorry, I guess I'm still hungry after dinner," Quinn said, laughing nervously. "Why don't you grab something from the convenience store? It's not too far away," Vorden said. Quinn looked at his watch and realized even if he did go to the convenience store to grab something, he wouldn't be able to buy anything in the first place since he had no credits. But before he could even say anything, Vorden had come over and tapped his watch against Quinn's. "Transfer of 10 credits successful," the notification sounded. "Don't even say anything and go grab something," Vorden said with a smile. "Thanks." With that, Quinn left Peter and Vorden on their own, while Quinn rushed off to the convenience store. The convenience store wasn't too far away from military school. If you walked out, it would take you around 20 minutes. At the front of the school was a huge gate that had 2 guards standing at the entrance at all times. Only students, teachers, and certain military personnel were allowed on the school grounds. So when you exited, students were required to show their wristwatch to the guard, and same upon entering again. Once past the gates, Quinn decided to test out how much 10 stamina points really were. He started to jog at a relatively fast pace to the convenience store. After running for about 5 minutes, he realized that he wasn't out of breath or anything like he usually would be. He decided to run even faster, eventually making it to the convenience store in 7 minutes. "I think I was doing about a kilometer in under 5 minutes, and I'm not even out of breath," Quinn thought. The stats given to him were that of an athlete's body. It wasn't the same weak body he had before, but at the same time, it wasn't a supernatural body that surpassed human limits. Another thing he noticed while running at night, he could see everything super clear. Even when there were no street lights, it was as if the moon had lightened everything up. A type of night vision of sorts. "System alert, your hunger grows slightly." "I know. I don't need the system to tell me when I'm hungry." When Quinn entered the convenience store, he went and grabbed a few of his favorite snacks. Some late-night ice cream and potato chips. That's when he suddenly spotted Riley and his friends in the same store down another aisle. Quinn ducked down quietly and waited for them to finish shopping before doing anything else. "What luck. I thought I would have to track him down, but it seems like he's come right to me." While Quinn was hiding, he noticed he was in the middle of the masks section. There was one particular mask that stood out to him. It was a fully black mask that covered the top half of the face so the mouth could be seen. Across the mask was blood splatter on it. Kinda spooky looking. Once Riley and the others had left the store, Quinn decided to grab the mask and snacks and placed them on the counter. Layla, who was also in the store, noticed the mask that Quinn had bought. "What the, it's not Halloween yet. What is he doing buying a mask like that? She thought. Layla decided to continue to follow Quinn, while Quinn was busy following Riley and his friends. Hey, we're going to shoot some hoops in the park. You want to join? One of the boys asked. Nah, you know my ability is useless for playing games like that, Riley replied. I think I'll just head back and wait by the school gate, see if there are any more suckers I can leech some credits from. The other two boys looked at each other. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but were only doing it because they themselves didn't want to get beaten up by a higher power level. Where it seemed like Riley was starting to get a little pleasure from bullying those weaker than him. Riley started to head back to school and eventually reached a small park on the way back, an area that was completely void of people and had very little lights. There were also plenty of trees for Quinn to hide himself. It's showtime, Quinn said as he put the mask on his face. Chapter 17, Level Up. Quinn continued to follow Riley into the forest until he had eventually reached the park. It was mostly dark outside, and the only visible light in the area was coming from either the moon or the single street lamp. After checking if there were any people nearby, Quinn decided it was time to act and put on his mask. Even if he spots me now, he won't know who to come back to for revenge. Riley was currently going through the information on his watch. The glowing light displayed he had a total of 80 credits. I'm a genius. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, Riley said. I have more than enough to pay Dan and keep some for myself. As long as I stay on Dan's good side, no one will try to attack me. As soon as Riley finished his thought, he felt a large impact on his right side. Just then Quinn had come out from the trees and threw out a kick, causing Riley to stumble to the ground. When Riley looked up, all he could see was a student wearing a horrifying mask with a blood splat on the front. What the heck, who are you? Riley shouted. Of course, Quinn wasn't going to answer and wanted to finish the fight fast. He ran up to Riley and threw another kick, this time though Riley was prepared and lifted his hands, managing to block the kick. When Quinn's legs hit Riley's hands, though, it felt like he was kicking against solid rock. Ouch, Quinn said as he quickly leapt backward to check on his leg. He lifted his trousers and saw his leg was badly hurt. It looked like his bones had even bent in slightly. What? Riley thought as he saw his attacker fall back. Then Riley spotted his attacker's wristwatch, which lit up brightly in the dark and displayed the number 1. Riley started to laugh. I see now. You're probably one of the students I took the credits from earlier, and I'm guessing you thought you could get some revenge. Quinn then quickly used his inspect skill on his opponent. System alert, HP 810. System alert race, human. System alert ability, hardening. System alert blood type, B+. Damn it, no wonder my leg felt like it hit a rock. Although Quinn's surprise attack didn't work, he still felt like he could win this fight. Quinn charged in once again, this time throwing a fist. The attack was faster than Riley had expected, and he didn't have time to use his hardening skill, and he took the blow right in the face. I think he cracked my tooth. How hard does this kid hit? Riley thought. Quinn threw another punch with his other hand, but Riley had predicted this and hardened his face in time. When Quinn's fist hit Riley's face, once again it felt like he was hitting a rock. System alert, your fist is broken. System alert, 7/10 HP. Quinn then stepped back, causing distance between the two. Again, what am I meant to do if he keeps hardening his body? Then a thought came into Quinn's mind. If Riley was able to harden his body, then why didn't he just keep it hardened all the time? If he did, then Quinn's first attack wouldn't have gone through. Did this mean that Riley was only able to harden a single part of his body at a time? It was just a theory, but Quinn had nothing to lose, and this gave him a plan. Quinn ran forward at Riley one more time, shouting, "I'm going to punch that ugly face of yours if it's the last thing I do." Riley then hardened his face again and was ready this time. But at the last second, Quinn changed his punch to a kick in the stomach, causing Riley to bend over. It worked. Then Quinn went to knee Riley in the stomach again, but at the last second stopped and punched Riley on the back of the head. Now Riley laid on the ground defenseless. Ray gave one fast, swift attack to the back of his head, and Riley was knocked out. "Did you really think I would call where I was going to attack?" Quinn said. "System alert. Quest has been completed." "System alert. 50x will be rewarded." "System alert. Power level difference of 1." "System alert. 20 additional X will be awarded." "System alert. 100. "System alert. You have reached the maximum amount of XP." "System alert. Would you like to level up?" Would I like to level up? Why even bother asking? Quinn thought. System alert, yes. System alert. Once you have leveled up, will any changes be irreversible? Who cares? Yes. System alert, congratulations. You are now level 2. System alert, evolution process has started. Evolution. Suddenly, Quinn felt a large stabbing pain in his heart. It started to beat faster than it had ever done before. The blood started to rush through his veins all over his body. The pain was so much that Quinn had fallen to his knees, but he did his best to keep in any screams, fearing he would alarm anyone. The pain continued throughout his body. His broken hand started to heal along with his legs, and then a sharp stabbing pain could be felt in his teeth. The pain continued to last for a further 5 minutes until it had eventually stopped. System alert. Congratulations, you have successfully evolved. System alert. You are now a halfling. Quinn stared at the words the system gave him, but it didn't make sense to him. He had never heard of the term halfling before. Then even more messages started to appear. System alert. Your stats have increased. System alert. A new skill has been unlocked. System alert. LV1 blood swipe. Blood swipe. A skill that has a range of 5 meters. It will fire out a red line of energy from the user's hands. To use the skill, the user must use their own blood, causing HP per blood swipe. Before Quinn had time to check out the changes to his stats, another message had appeared, which was the most shocking of them yet. System alert. Your hunger grows. System alert. You can no longer suppress your need for blood. System alert. Your HP will decrease by HP every hour until you have consumed human blood. Chapter 18. I am a vampire. Quinn had to take a few steps back and took a minute to take everything in. He couldn't believe what he was reading right now. After seeing that last message, there was only one thing that came into his head. I'm a vampire. Maybe Quinn was just trying to avoid the truth this whole time, but this was the final thing to confirm it. Quinn had his suspicions after reading the book, but everything was adding up, him being weaker in the sun, his night vision, and the fact the system wanted him to drink blood. But now it was telling him that he would have to drink blood, otherwise he would die. Quinn stood there looking down at Riley, who was passed out lying on the ground. Quinn gulped his saliva down. For some reason, something was drawing him to Riley's body. Without realizing it, he was slowly moving forward, and suddenly he could see Riley's pulse beating through his neck, the blood flowing through his veins. System alert. Bonus quest granted. System alert. Consume your victim's blood to gain a stat point. How am I even meant to do this? Quinn thought as he looked at Riley like a piece of meat on a plate. Layla had continued to watch Quinn since he left the convenience store. When she saw Quinn following Riley and him holding the mask, she had an idea of what Quinn was planning to do. She kept a safe distance back while staying in between the trees to avoid being seen. That's when she saw the whole thing. She saw Quinn put on the mask and beat Riley to the ground, but then she was wondering what Quinn was doing. He was kneeling on the floor as if he was in pain, and now he was looking at Riley very strangely, she thought. The next second, she saw Quinn go to the ground and lift Riley's body slightly off the floor. "What the?" Layla said. "He can't be planning to. Kiss him. What is wrong with this person?" Quinn continued to lift Riley off the ground and place him back down again, as he was deciding on what to do. "Damn it, in the movies it is so much easier," Quinn said. "The idea of sticking my teeth into someone, I just can't do it." In the end, Quinn decided to leave Riley's body there and head back to the school. "I wonder what that was all about in the end. He didn't do anything," Layla thought. Quinn started to head back to school and placed the mask back in his shopping bag. He noticed that the ice cream he had bought had melted, but for some reason when he looked at it, it no longer looked appetizing. There was a hunger in his stomach that he knew wouldn't be satisfied with food, and he wondered just how long he would be able to hold it in. When Quinn had finally arrived back at school, he decided to stop by the toilet first. Quinn was looking at himself in the mirror to see if there were any noticeable changes, but Quinn looked the same as before. Then Quinn lifted up his lips so he could get a better view of his teeth, but they too had stayed the same. "Phew, at least it looks like no one will be able to tell. I wonder why I felt pain in my teeth at the time then." Quinn then decided to open his status screen to see if there were any differences from before now that he had leveled up and evolved. System alert name, Quinn Talen. System alert race, halfling. System alert, HP 1515. System alert X 5200. System alert, strength 10. System alert, agility 10. System alert, stamina 10. System alert, attribute points available 1. Quinn's health had increased by 50%, while everything else seemed to have remained the same. To be honest, Quinn was pretty bummed out about that, but just underneath he could see that there was a single attribute point. When Quinn pressed on the system, it would allow him to increase his strength, agility, or stamina by 1 point. Quinn thought about it for a while and decided to add a point to his agility. System alert, agility 11. Even though Quinn wanted to put it into strength in case he met more people like Riley, he thought he could overcome that problem with a good beast weapon and would just be a waste of stats. What he wanted right now was to be able to be fast and agile like an assassin. Quinn wondered if there was a reason why the system had only given him 1 point. Then he started to remember the additional quest that it had given him. As long as Quinn consumed the blood of his victim, it would give him a stat point. So far, Quinn would have been able to have an additional 2 stat points, while leveling up only gave him 1. If Quinn wanted to get stronger, then this would be the quickest way. But Quinn was unsure on whether or not he would be able to do it. He needed to try to do more research into the system and see if there was anything he could find out. He had a direction now and knew his system was similar to that of a vampire. Perhaps if he learned more about them, he would be able to figure out if there was a way around drinking the blood as well. With that, Quinn decided to head to his room where he could hear Vorden and Peter practicing together. Peter was trying his best to learn the skill book the military had given him, while Vorden was tutoring him. When Quinn had entered the room, Vorden and Peter greeted him as usual. "What took you so long?" Vorden asked. "We thought you might have gotten lost." "No, I just went exploring the city a little," Quinn replied. "I'm a bit tired. I think I'm going to go to bed early." "Maybe we should call it a day for now as well," Peter said. With that, the group turned off the lights and went to sleep. All except for one person, that is. Quinn was unable to sleep. His stomach was in a tremendous amount of pain, and he had too much on his mind. Eventually, though, he finally managed to close his eyes and drift off. When he woke up the next day, though, the pain was worse than ever. His head was ringing, and his senses felt like they were on high alert. The first thing Quinn did was open up his system. System alert, 10 hours have passed. System alert, you hunger grows. System alert, you have lost minus 10 HP. System alert, HP 515. System alert, your HP will continue to decrease every hour. This was bad. Quinn finally realized that he had no choice and didn't have time to figure out another way. He needed to drink human blood, and he needed to in the next 5 hours. Chapter 19, Running Out of Time. Even though Quinn had lost 2-3 of his HP, it didn't feel like he was hurt or dying. It wasn't like when he was out in the sun when he felt weak. Instead, it felt like all his senses were on high alert. "Hey, Quinn, are you all right, man?" Vorden asked, seeing Quinn's face in shock. "Yeah, I just got to go somewhere," Quinn said as he rushed out of the room, heading down to the canteen. Everything that happened so far was a miscalculation on Quinn's part. Although the system had told him he would lose 1 HP every hour, he didn't expect his body to react like this. Originally, he only planned to sleep for 5 hours as he was too worn out after the fight yesterday. That way, he would still have at least 10 hours and a few hours in the morning before classes started. Quinn started to calculate how much time he had left. Breakfast was a requirement which lasted from 8 till 9. Then classes went on till 12 midday for lunch. That meant there were 4 more hours where he was required to be somewhere in the school. Of course, there was always the option of skipping, but this wasn't like regular school. The army would severely punish you and hunt you down if you did. But what did that matter if he was going to die anyway? Quinn was currently in the canteen queue to be served some food. He was breathing in deep breaths, and in and out slowly. It was helping him get the hang of his heightened senses. He could hear the conversation from the other side of the room. Pots and pans clanging in the kitchen as if they were next to him. Slowly, Quinn was figuring out how to ignore all these, and it was making his mind think clearer. Just then, though, Riley had entered the canteen. He had no markings on his body from the fight yesterday, as he had managed to make a full recovery at the medical center, but he was in a terrible mood after what had happened yesterday. As soon as he saw Quinn, he had found a target to take out all his pent-up frustration on. Riley walked past all the level ones that were in the queue until he eventually reached the spot where Quinn was standing. "Hey, Pipsqueak, you got a problem if I cut in front of you?" Riley asked. But Quinn was too busy trying to focus the sounds out of his mind. "Are you ignoring me? Today is not the day to ignore me." Riley looked at Quinn's wristwatch, seeing the number 1 shine bright on it. Immediately bad memories of yesterday's fight had come into his head, and how all he wanted to do was kill the person, but that would have to wait for now, and Quinn would have to do it. "I said don't ignore me," Riley said as he grabbed Quinn by the collar. But in that instant, Riley's face was incredibly close to Quinn's. Quinn could hear Riley's heartbeat. He could feel the blood flowing through his arm and muscles lifting his shirt. Something had taken over Quinn's body, and he immediately hit Riley's arm away and pounced on him, causing the 2 of them to fall to the ground. Quinn was now on top of Riley and had both his hands pinned down. "Get off me, you crazy animal," Riley said, but when Riley tried to overpower Quinn and lift his hands, it was impossible. Even his ability was useless in this situation. His ability only hardened his skin. It didn't make him any more powerful. Then Quinn started to feel something growing in his mouth. Quinn placed his head just a few inches away from Riley's neck and was ready. Just as Quinn opened his mouth, though, he felt someone pull him by the back of his collar and chucked him off Riley towards the people in the queue. "Don't touch one of my boys," Dan said. Dan was a large man for his age with a muscular build. He didn't look like a teenage boy, but more like a bald adult. "Dan, thank you so much," Riley said as he stood up from the ground sweating. "You're dead now, boy." As soon as Dan took one step forward, though, Vorden stepped in front of Quinn with Peter. "Do you really want to cause a problem?" Vorden said, lifting his arm to show the power level on his wristwatch. The truth was, Vorden was only bluffing. Vorden's power very much depended on what ability he copied, and right now all he had was Peter's level 1 Earth ability. If they were to get into a fight here, there was no contest on who would win. But Vorden's plan seemed to work, as Dan decided to back down and take Riley with him. But before Riley walked off, he signaled to Quinn imitating someone cutting his head off. "Oh, thank you, I can't believe that worked," Peter said, knowing Vorden's secret. After the canteen incident was over, something became clear to Quinn. That teacher wouldn't step in no matter what happened. In the canteen, there were many guards standing in each corner of the room, but not once did they step in to help. After the group finished eating, it was time for them to go to their morning classes, but Quinn was unable to concentrate on anything. All he could do was try to calm himself down while in the middle of class and watch his HP slowly tick away. It was driving him insane, seeing the number go down hour by hour, and now wished he had just bitten into Riley's neck yesterday. Then, when it came to lunchtime, Quinn once again rushed off without Vorden and Peter this time to the library. "System alert, 115 HP. "What the hell is happening to me?" Quinn said as his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Each time Quinn's HP would go down, it was getting harder and harder to control his own body, and sooner or later he would go crazy. During class, he had multiple visions of tearing the place apart and ripping out the blood from their necks. Without realizing where he was walking to, Quinn eventually ended up in the library. In the quiet corner of the library down one of the aisles was the fiction section. "Please have something I can use," Quinn said as he took out fantasy book after fantasy book about vampires. In some of the books, vampires were able to live off animal blood, but Quinn's system clearly stated he needed human blood. Not just that, but it would be hard for him to find an animal in time. In other stories, there were talks of going to the hospital and raiding their supply, but the hospital in the city was heavily guarded, and he didn't have time for that. Finally, for the first time, Quinn could feel himself getting weaker. He sat on the floor and read one last book and found nothing of use. When he closed the book, he could see Layla standing there opposite him. "Are you okay?" Layla asked Quinn as he was starting to look very pale. Layla then bent down so she was at eye level with Quinn and placed her hand on his forehead to check his temperature. "You're so cold. Do you want me to take you to the nurse's office?" Layla asked. Quinn replied with one word. "Sorry," he said as he pulled Layla's arm, bringing her close to him, and bit into Layla's neck. Chapter 20, A Problem. As Quinn opened his mouth wide, he could feel the ends of his teeth start to grow. He didn't know what had come over him, and it was as if his body had just taken control. His mind wasn't all there. His teeth quickly sunk into Layla's skin, and at the same time, a gush of blood entered Quinn's mouth. However, Layla didn't feel any pain from this, but instead, it felt like pleasure. A tingling sensation ran through her body as she felt the blood rush up through and out of her neck. Even if she wanted to resist, she couldn't. The bite seemed to have a paralysis effect. Finally, Quinn's hunger was going away. "System alert, your hunger has decreased. System alert, your hunger has decreased. System alert, you will no longer lose HP." Even though the messages had appeared, Quinn continued to suck Layla's blood away. "System alert, HP regenerating. System alert, HP regenerating. System alert, 1515 HP. Then, when the last message had appeared, Quinn's mind had finally come back to him. He let go of Layla, causing her body to fall to the ground. "What the?" Quinn said as he looked around himself, only then noticing Layla on the ground. "Did I do that?" Then images of what he had just done popped into his head. Although at the time he felt like he had no control, in the end, his whole body was still working, causing him to remember everything he had done. System alert. A+ blood type has been absorbed. System alert. You have gained 1+ strength. Although Quinn wanted to check what the message had said and what it meant, he needed to get Layla out of the library fast. Even though they were in a quiet part of the library, there was no telling when somebody would come back. Thankfully, Quinn could see Layla breathing, so he at least knew she wasn't dead, but there were 2 clear bite marks on her neck that needed to be dealt with. Quinn then lifted Layla up with his 2 hands, finding her surprisingly lighter than he thought. As Quinn headed to the doctor's office, he couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. A part of him thought that the system might have just been playing tricks on him. Even though he could see his HP going down, he never felt like he was going to die at any point. And Quinn didn't even know if going to 0 HP meant death. But after what had happened today, he didn't want to find out. There were a few things Quinn needed to do. He needed to find out how frequently his body required blood. To do this meant he would have to once again starve his body of blood. But this time he would get blood beforehand, so he would be better prepared. But before even all that, he had another serious problem in his hands. Layla, would she remember anything when she got up, or would Quinn have to convince her to keep it a secret? If others were to find out of his rare ability, it would start a bidding war between the private companies and military. They would do anything to get their hand on a new type of ability. Before anyone could find out about Quinn, he needed to be strong enough to protect himself. While Quinn walked down the hallway, he got quite a few looks from the other students. It wasn't strange to see someone carrying an injured person in the school, but it was strange for a boy to carry a girl unless they were an item. Finally, Quinn had reached the infirmary, where there was a single female doctor named Haley, who looked to be in her early 30s. She wore round glasses and had her hair up in a ponytail. Quinn never got the chance to mess around with girls while he was at school, but looking at the doctor, he couldn't help but appreciate her natural beauty. "Another one," Haley said. "There's a bed free at the back, take her over there." Quinn did as he was told and placed Layla gently on one of the single beds in the back. The infirmary was quite large. Quinn had never seen a school have one so big. There were a total of 30 beds, but Haley was the only one working there. At the moment, about half the beds were filled up with students, and Quinn couldn't help but notice most of them were low levels. There were the odd high levels as well. Even they got into their own fights and disagreements. Haley came over to where Quinn and Layla were and started to examine Layla. She placed her hand around her wrist and did a few other checks. That's when she noticed the 2 small hole marks on her neck. "What happened?" Haley asked. "I'm not sure. I was in the library when I saw her on the ground like that," Quinn replied. "I don't know how long she was passed out for, but the wound on her neck looks like it's already healing on its own," Haley said. "Still, I can't be sure if it will heal, and it would be a shame if a pretty girl like her got a scar." Haley then placed her hand on Layla's neck where the bite marks were. She closed her eyes and after a few seconds, lifted her hands and the bite marks had vanished. "Is it okay if I wait here for her?" Quinn asked. "Oh, young kids these days," Haley said, laughing. "I didn't realize you two were like that." No, no, no," Quinn said, waving his arms. "We're just friends, that's all." After Haley had gone away to look after other students, Quinn decided to open up his system. System alert, strength 11. System alert, agility 11. System alert, stamina 10. It really did give me an extra stat point after all. After sucking Layla's blood, it seemed like he had gained a stat point. Quinn remembered after defeating opponents the system would give him an additional quest to suck his victim's blood. The reward was a stat point, but it seemed like there was no need for him to get a quest. Was Quinn able to drink anyone's blood and gain stat points? What happened if Quinn was to drink Layla's blood again? Would he gain another stat? There were so many questions Quinn wanted answers for. He looked at Layla lying there peacefully. Right now, he was in complete control of his body, and there was no urge for him to suck on Layla's neck again. After checking his teeth, he realized that they had gone back to normal. That's when Quinn decided to look around the room, until he finally found what he was looking for, a syringe with a needle. Quinn looked around the room and saw that Haley was busy dealing with another student. He carefully took the syringe and hid it behind his back, and then quickly scooted over to where Layla was once more. "I'm really sorry about this, Layla," Quinn said, "but you're going to have to be my guinea pig." Quinn took out the syringe and carefully looked at where Layla's veins were. Luckily, Layla was quite pale, making her veins more visible. Quinn searched carefully for the right spot and was ready, but just as Quinn was about to extract some blood, he heard someone crash into the room. "Is Quinn here?" a boy's voice said. "Isn't that Peter?" Quinn immediately put the syringe in one of his trouser pockets and went to see what was happening. "Quinn, you're here. Come quick. I've been looking everywhere for you. It's Vorden, he's in trouble." Chapter 21, I Am a Monster. Although Quinn had no idea what was happening, just from looking at Peter's face, he could tell it was serious. Quinn then looked behind to see Layla lying there still sleeping away. It was important for Quinn to be there when Layla woke up. He had to convince her to not tell anyone her secret, but right now it seemed like Vorden was in trouble. Quinn then thought back to the incident at the canteen. When Quinn was in trouble, Vorden stepped up to help him. Although there probably wasn't much Quinn could do to help, he wouldn't know if he didn't try. What kind of person would he be if he couldn't help Vorden now? "All right, come on," Quinn said. "Let's hurry." The two of them quickly ran through the hallways until they had finally reached the assembly hall. It was currently a large, empty hall with marble flooring and a stage at the front. It hadn't been used for anything yet so far, but it was the area where the students would be called if they were to have a meeting. When the two of them entered the assembly hall, there were already multiple students there mumbling about a commotion. "Did you see what happened?" "Yeah, that guy is a monster. How could he do that?" Luckily, the second-year students were here to stop him. The assembly hall was completely trashed. Craters and rubble had formed on parts of the walls and ground. Burn marks and other things were there as well, and there was even blood. Something Quinn could smell the second he had entered the room. "What happened here?" Quinn asked. "Where's Vorden?" Clearly, a fight had taken place here, and Quinn feared the worst. "I don't know," Peter replied. "Me and Vorden were busy messing around practicing my Earth ability together. That's when a bunch of second years I'd never seen before came up to us asking for Vorden. Vorden told me not to worry, but of course, I worried, so I followed them. That's when I saw them take him to the assembly hall, but two of the students stood guard and wouldn't let me come inside. I didn't know what to do, so that's when I came looking for you." Quinn and Peter then went around asking the students what happened, but when they did, the students seemed to avoid the question or completely ignore them, as if they were told not to tell anyone what they had seen. While Peter continued to ask the students that were still in the hall about what happened, Quinn already knew that they wouldn't give him any more answers, so he started to do some inspecting of his own. The smell of iron in the room was thicker than anything else to Quinn, and it led him to an area where dried up could be seen on the floor. "Inspect." His name, Vorden Blade. Race, human. Blood type, O. Quinn started to inspect the battle scene and found more traces of blood, but when he used the inspect skill on them, it wouldn't show him any information at all. It would only show system alert. Do I have to use the inspection skill on them in person? Quinn thought. It was a shame the blood on the floor had already dried up. Otherwise, Quinn would have used the syringe he had on hand. Just then, Peter had finished questioning everyone and returned to Quinn. It doesn't look like anyone wants to talk, Peter said. Figures, let's just head back to our dorm. Who knows, he might have returned. The two of them then headed back to the dorm room together, and when they entered, they were surprised to actually see Vorden already there. However, something wasn't right. Vorden wasn't his regular self. Just by looking at him, Quinn and Peter could tell he had been in a rough fight. Bruises and scuff marks everywhere, large cuts on his back. He looked like he had been in a tough battle. Not only that, but Vorden didn't even greet them when the two entered. The Vorden they had come to know was not the same Vorden right now. Vorden just stayed there lying down on his bed. Vorden, what happened? Is everything all right? Peter asked. Yeah, just leave me be, I'll be fine, Vorden said. If you stay near me, you will just get hurt anyway. What are you talking about, Vorden? Peter shouted. Look at you, you have to go to the doctor's office. Come on, let's go. Just leave me alone, please, Vorden said quietly. Quinn, come on, say something, he needs to go to the doctor's office, right? But as Peter turned around to seek support from Quinn, Quinn was nowhere to be seen. Even he thinks I'm a monster, Vorden mumbled to himself. Just outside the dorm room, Quinn was leaning up against the door, panting hard and sweating. Although he had no reaction when looking at people anymore, it was different when he saw Vorden. Vorden still had fresh cut marks all over his body, and the smell coming off him was strong. Suddenly, Quinn felt like he had a craving for a little bit of blood. It was something he could control. It wasn't like last time where his body had taken over, but it had brought back bad memories for him, and he was a little afraid of what might have happened. I really need to find out what's going on with this strange system ability I have. Then a thought came into his head. There was a pending problem that he still hadn't dealt with. Although Vorden was acting strange right now, Quinn knew he was safe. Whatever problems Vorden were dealing with now would just have to wait. Every second wasted meant there was a chance for Layla to wake up, and who knew what would happen when she did. Just then, at the same time in the doctor's office, in the corner at the back of the room, Layla slowly started to open her eyes. What happened? Layla said. Where am I? As Layla looked around the room, she started to rub her neck, and at the same time images had flashed through her head of what had happened at the library. She remembered everything. Chapter 22, Layla's request. When images of what had happened to Layla started flashing through her head, she immediately started to get this tingling feeling over her body. She was reacting to the memories of Quinn biting into her. It wasn't a painful memory, but quite an addictive feeling. The sensation of the blood rushing through her body. Her face was starting to turn a little red just thinking about it. That's when she lifted her hand and placed it on her neck. I can't feel anything. Oh, so you're awake, Haley said with a smile. You were sleeping so peacefully there, I didn't know when you were going to wake up. How did I get here? Layla asked. Oh, a boy came in and dropped you off. He said he was your friend. I can't remember his name, but he had short, black, curly hair, Haley said with a smile, thinking about the two of them. This confirmed Layla's thought. Quinn must have brought her here right after biting her. Haley then noticed that Layla was rubbing the side of her neck with her hand. Oh, I got rid of those 2 marks for you. Do you remember what happened? Once again, as she thought back to the memory of Quinn biting her, she started to get goosebumps all over her body. I'm not sure, maybe it was a beast, Layla replied. A beast? Yeah, I hear sometimes a stray can come out with the students while they're training through the portals, Layla said nervously, hoping that Haley would believe her lie. Well, whatever it was, I'm sure someone else will deal with it. It's just a good thing you're safe now. Quinn was running through the school halls as fast as he could. He needed to make it to the doctor's office before Layla woke up. He had no idea how Layla would react. Not only that, but what were the consequences of biting someone? If it was like some of the vampire novels Quinn had read in the library, some vampires had the ability to turn others. Right now, Quinn thought that might be a better situation than everyone finding out about his ability. Finally, Quinn had reached the doctor's office, and he pulled the door wide open. "Oh, hello again," Haley said. "If you're looking for the girl, you just missed her. She left a little while ago." "Really? Did she happen to say anything?" Quinn asked. Judging by Haley's reaction, it didn't seem like Layla had said anything, but he needed to make sure. "Oh, you mean about the wound? She said that a beast might have attacked her, although I highly doubt that. It looked more like a snake bite, but how did it manage to get into the school and all the way up her neck?" Haley continued to ramble on. She often did this as she was left on her own a lot of the time, being the only doctor stationed at the school. It was a lonely job. "Thanks for letting me know," Quinn said as he closed the door. Why did Layla decide to keep it a secret? Quinn thought. He had basically assaulted the poor girl. Could it be that she didn't remember what happened, or maybe she was planning to use blackmail against him, but that didn't make sense. She had nothing to gain. Quinn had always thought like this. People, when they did something, always did it for selfish reasons. That's just the way people were. He couldn't believe that Layla would keep this a secret for no reason. Just then, while Quinn was outside the doctor's office thinking of what to do next, he felt a hand on his shoulder. "You and we need to talk," Layla said. Had she been waiting here this whole time? This was bad. Layla clearly indicated that she knew something, which meant losing her memory of the events was unlikely. The two of them then headed to the library where the incident took place. Quinn felt a bit more relaxed. Taking him here meant she wasn't looking for a fight, as there were other students in the room. The two of them sat at a table and activated the orb so only the two of them could be heard. As they looked into each other's eyes for a bit, Quinn started to run multiple scenarios through his head. If the worst came to worst, he might have to silence her. "What happened at the library? What did you do?" Layla asked, rubbing her neck. "Why bother asking if you already know what happened?" Quinn said. "Just tell me what you want." "I don't know if you know this, but I kept an eye on you for longer than you think. After observing you for a while, I came to a conclusion. You're a vampire, aren't you?" Quinn started to laugh, nervously hoping to throw Layla off track. He was actually amazed by how she had come to the conclusion so fast when it even took him a while. Even if she did see everything he had done so far, he didn't think this was the natural conclusion someone would come to. "And why would you think that?" "I saw you lifting that boy's neck. At the time I thought you were doing something else cause I couldn't see clearly," Layla said as her ears started to heat up a little. "But after what you had done to me, it confirms it." Quinn started to sweat slightly at the integration. He wasn't worried about Layla herself, but the troubles she could bring him in the future. Quinn didn't know what to say and thought he would wait for Layla to make her demand. Layla then took a deep breath before saying her next words. This is what Quinn was waiting for, her request. "I want you to hear me out. I want you to make me a vampire." Quinn was so shocked by the words that had come out of Layla's mouth that he nearly fell out of his seat. "What? Do you realize what you are saying right now?" "Please," Layla said as if she was begging him. "It's a childhood dream of mine. This type of thing only happens in books or fairy tales, and now I have the chance for it to happen right now," she said with her eyes lit up. Now Quinn realized why Layla didn't tell anyone. Simply put, this girl was crazy. Chapter 23, An Assistant. Layla had grown up her whole life reading fantasy stories and comics about all sorts of things. Before the whole war started, her father used to work as a writer, so her home was filled with books and stories, and her favorite ones were always about vampires. She loved everything about them, how they had to keep their identity secret to the world, the super strength they had, the super speed, and the fact that they could live on nearly forever. When abilities were realized to the world, it made fantasy stories a thing of the past. Many people read stories because they were fantasy. It allowed them to imagine doing something that they could never do, but now that humans actually had special powers, what was the point? However, the love for vampires never died down for Layla. It only grew. If abilities existed then, that meant somewhere out there maybe vampires did too. When she saw Quinn's actions, she had already convinced herself that he was a vampire. Quinn was right when he thought a normal person wouldn't have come to the same conclusion, but that was because Layla wasn't a normal person. Layla then suddenly got out of her seat and started to bow down to Quinn on her knees. The students in the room, although they couldn't hear their conversation, couldn't help but look at them. "Please, I'll do anything for you," Layla said. "All right, I understand. Please get up," Quinn said. The two of them sat down at their seats again. Before Quinn started to speak, he let out a big sigh, thinking about how he was going to explain this to her. "It's not what you think," Quinn said. "I'm not a vampire. I became like this from an ability book." Suddenly, the smile on Layla's face disappeared. "You know what that means, right?" Quinn asked. Layla nodded. Quinn was basically telling her it was impossible for him to give her this ability. The reason was that a human body could only activate one ability. When learning an ability, it mutated the genes inside of your body, but once your genes had been mutated, they could no longer change or add a second mutation. Because Layla already had the ability of telekinesis, it meant Layla was unable to learn a second ability. Then, why did you hide this from the academy? Why did you tell them you had no ability? If you got this from an ability book, you can't be an original. "Have you ever heard of an ability like this?" Quinn asked. Layla thought about it for a while and realized there was nothing quite like it. There was never a record of an ability requiring someone to drink blood. But if you told the school you got it from an ability book, one that's not even been registered, and you aren't an original, you could make a fortune selling the book, Layla said excitedly. "I wish that was true, but I can't do that either," Quinn explained. "When I learned the ability, the book simply vanished." Layla was debating whether Quinn was telling the truth or not, but she had no choice but to believe him. It was the only explanation of why Quinn was so adamant in hiding his ability. Ability books didn't just vanish, they were books. They could be passed on for others to learn. If people found out about this, multiple companies and the military would put immense pressure on Quinn to share the ability with the world. And with no powerful family backing him, Layla couldn't imagine what would be done to him. They would never believe him if he said he got it from an ability book, and it disappeared. Quinn then proceeded to tell Layla about everything that had happened so far. About how his ability was a game, like a system, and it had given him strange quests, and he could unlock skills. It was nothing like the vampire stories Layla used to read, but at the same time, it seemed like the system was applying similar rules. "Fine, I will keep this as a secret, but only on one condition. I want you to help you out," Layla said. "Clearly you don't know much about this thing, so much so that you had gone out of control and bit me in the neck. We can't have you going around school biting people. They'll take you away in a heartbeat. If you need to feast on someone, then feast on me," Layla said, placing her hand on herself. Quinn started to think about the situation. Having Layla as a helper was a big advantage. Quinn himself wanted to test multiple things about the system, and here he had someone offering to help for free. And it truly felt like Layla was telling the truth. Not only that, but Layla seemed to be more knowledgeable about vampires than himself. Perhaps she would even be able to help him in his research. "It's a deal," Quinn said as the two of them shook hands. Layla was happy that Quinn had accepted. The truth was Layla still hadn't given up the idea of being a vampire. Unlike Quinn, Layla wasn't too sure that what Quinn had was an ability in the first place. An ability was usually a specific set of skills, but Quinn had completely changed as if he was no longer human. "All right, the first thing is first. You are going to need to take some of my blood," Layla said. "That way, if you're getting hungry again, you can drink some of that." Layla then pulled down her shirt slightly and started to show her neck towards Quinn. "What are you thinking? We can't do it here in front of the library, and I'm not just going to bite into your neck." As the two continued to talk and chat about things in the library, about what to do next, Vorden had entered the library and could see Quinn talking to Layla, both chatting and smiling away. "So you've forgotten about me that quickly, huh?" Vorden said. "You're just like the rest of them. I'll show you what it means to betray me, Quinn. If people are going to call me a monster, then I might as well embrace it and become one." Chapter 20, For a School Seeker. Peter was currently running around the school looking for Quinn or Vorden. For some reason, both of his new friends had suddenly started acting very strange, and Peter didn't know what to do about it. His life at his previous school had been hell, and he did everything he could to serve those above him. And for the first time ever, he had made friends that protected him. Quinn, even though he was a low level himself, had stood up for Peter and Vorden, who had not only protected him, but helped him learn his new ability. Something had happened to Vorden, and suddenly he was acting strange. Although Peter had no clue what was going on with Quinn, he had some idea about what had changed Vorden. It was after whatever had happened at the assembly hall with the second-year students. But no matter who he would talk to about it, not one person would give him an answer. Some even began to threaten him. That's when Peter could hear a familiar voice. While walking down the hallway, Peter could hear someone speaking, a voice he recognized. As he turned the corner, he saw that it was indeed Vorden. Vorden stood there staring idly at the ground. Peter quickly hid back around the hallway corner. So far, whenever Peter had spotted Vorden, he would just ignore him and walk away without even speaking to him. But now it sounded like Vorden was speaking to someone else. "Would you two calm down?" Vorden said. There was then a brief pause before Vorden spoke again. "I don't care if he hurt the little one's feelings. It's not like Quinn isn't allowed to talk to other people." Again, there was a slight pause. "Look, if you get involved and hurt them, I won't forgive you. I won't let something like last time happen again." The whole time Peter was listening in to the conversation, the only voice he could hear was Vorden's, but it was clear that he was speaking to someone. Peter couldn't take it anymore and decided to take a peek, and as he did, still the only person he could see was Vorden. Did the other person leave already? Peter thought. Just then he saw Vorden start to walk off. The bell had rung, indicating that it was the end of their lunch break, and it was time to head to afternoon classes. That's when the library doors opened and Quinn and Layla appeared out walking together. "Quinn," Peter said as he waved him over. "I'll meet you at the front gate tonight once classes are over," Quinn said to Layla before leaving to join Peter. The two of them then started to walk off to class together. "Hey, are you okay, man?" Peter asked. "I was worried about you when you suddenly bolted out of the room like that." "Yes, sorry, man. I couldn't hold it in any longer, otherwise my underwear would have turned brown." Whoa, too much information," Peter said. "Anyway, I'm glad you're okay. Look, I'm really worried about Vorden. Ever since he came back from that assembly hall, he's been acting strange." Quinn placed his hand on Peter, seeing that he was clearly startled. This whole time, Quinn had more important things to worry about, but now that he had solved the most pressing matter, he had time to focus on other things. "Don't worry, we'll find out what's going on together." When they entered their next class, they could see that Vorden was already in his seat, sitting down, ready even before them. "Oh, hey guys, how are you doing?" Vorden said with a smile. Peter went to sit in his seat to the right of Vorden, while Quinn went to sit in his seat to the left of Vorden. "Hey, are you feeling better?" Peter asked. "Earlier it seemed like you were kinda sulking." "Yeah, don't worry. I just got kinda thrown around a bit by the second year, and it got me pretty down," Vorden replied. "What happened at the assembly hall?" Quinn asked. Then Vorden's face slightly changed. It was as if he was trying to hold something back. Vorden clenched his fist for a few seconds and finally relaxed his hand. Don't worry about it too much. You know I'm strong and know I can handle myself." Although Peter was quite satisfied now with Vorden, as he seemed to be his regular self, Quinn noticed that Vorden seemed to be holding something back, almost suppressing something when he asked that question. As other students started to enter the classroom, when they saw Vorden, they immediately started to whisper. If Vorden would look back at them, they would turn their head as soon as possible. As the students sat down, the talks continued, and several different words could be heard. Monster, freak, weirdo, crazy, and all these words were being aimed at Vorden. It was as if the whole school was sharing a secret that Peter and Quinn weren't allowed to know, and not even Vorden himself would say what had happened. After hearing these words, Quinn noticed that Vorden stayed there motionless with his head down. He hadn't even written any notes down in his notebook about the lesson. Although it seemed like no one would tell him or Peter what had happened, Quinn now had another ally that might be able to help him, and that was Layla. At the end of class, the teacher Dell projected a screen in front of the whole class. There was a list of names, each sorted into a different category. "Please look at this carefully and see where your name is, as tomorrow will be the start of your combat classes," Dell explained. The list was split up into several different categories. Each one was different depending on what type of ability you had. Elemental abilities, transformation abilities, enhancement abilities, and so on. That's when Quinn also noticed that his and a few other names were not on the list, including Vorden's. If your name is not on the list, it's because either your ability doesn't fall into one of the categories, or you are an original with a unique ability. You are free to choose to go to whichever class you believe suits you. Students are also able to switch between combat classes if they wish. These are not set in stone, but the school's recommendation based on your ability. The list of available classes was then sent to each student's wristwatch, where they were to register for the type of class they would be interested in. "I wonder what combat class would be best for me," Quinn thought as he looked at the long list. Chapter 25, Testing Blood. After classes had finished for the day, Vorden had offered to help Peter with his training again. Especially since tomorrow the two of them would be in the same combat classes, the elemental class. "Hey, do you want to come with us?" Peter asked. "Nah, I won't bother you guys. I wouldn't be much help anyway," Quinn replied. Peter was pleased that it seemed like the group had gotten back normal again. There was no tension between the three of them, and Peter wished it would stay that way forever. Just then, when Quinn had left, Vorden and Peter were left in the room. That's when Vorden asked Peter a question. "Hey, have you seen Quinn hanging around with a girl lately?" Vorden asked. "Come to think of it, I saw him exit with a girl at the library. It was the same one who was at the test with us that day, with the bow and arrow." After Peter had given an answer, for a split second, Peter felt like he saw the expression on Vorden's face change. But Quinn blinked and looked again, and Vorden seemed to be fine. "Maybe he's gone and got himself a little girlfriend. said Vorden, laughing. Quinn had, of course, decided to ditch the other two because he had already made plans to meet up with Layla beforehand. The two of them were to meet at the school gate, but before the two of them were to meet, Quinn decided to stop by the science lab. Although most lessons in military school were about combat or how to use technology, science was still a core subject. It was because of scientists that the human race had discovered how to use all the different technologies they had in the world today. So students were encouraged to continue to learn science throughout their service time, in hopes they would continue to in the future. The classrooms were empty for the day, and the important equipment was locked in a storage room. But Quinn wasn't looking for anything too fancy. All he needed was some test tubes and small corks. After searching around the room for a while, he found where they kept the test tubes. He took a total of 5 test tubes. Even though there were many there, if he took too much it would be suspicious, and Quinn couldn't carry more than 5 without having to worry about them breaking or not. Quinn shoved the 5 test tubes into a messenger bag he was carrying and wrapped them up in a spare shirt he took from his room. Quinn currently had a total of 6,200 exp until his next level up. 50 experience points had carried over from the last quest, and he had received 10 exp from his 2 daily quests. So far, with each level up, he would gain 1 additional stat point and 5 points of HP. Although Quinn had gotten stronger through this, it wasn't the fastest way for him to improve his strength. Quinn realized the system had offered him the chance to gain an additional stat point 2 times, as long as he drank his victim's blood. But when he drank Layla's blood, he still gained a stat point. This was what Quinn wanted to test out today. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, and the sun was just starting to set, meaning Quinn wasn't affected by the sun right now. As planned, Layla was standing there waiting for him by the gate with her bow on her back. Students who used weapons would carry it with them around most of the time. There was always the chance of an attack or a beast escaping through a portal. After the two of them met, they decided to walk to the nearby park that was in between the convenience store and the school. Then they ventured away from the trail into the woods where they were behind cover. No one ventured in these parts, and it was hard for them to be seen. "So are we going to do this?" Layla asked excitedly. Quinn still found it weird that rather than being scared by the whole situation, Layla was excited. "All right, close your eyes," said Quinn. Layla closed her eyes and was ready. She could still remember the satisfying feeling from the last time and couldn't wait to feel it again. Although she was a bit nervous when a thought came to her head that Quinn's lips would be on her neck. Suddenly, though, Layla felt a small prick in her arm. Layla opened her eyes and noticed that a needle was there. "What? You didn't think I was just going to bite you, did you?" Layla's cheeks suddenly went bright red. If it wasn't for the needle in her hand, she would have tried kicking Quinn away. Once the syringe had been filled up, Quinn squirted it out into one of the test tubes he brought with him. "Is it okay if I fill another one?" Quinn asked. Layla didn't say anything and held out her arm. She was still a bit embarrassed about what had happened earlier. Once Quinn had filled up 2 test tubes, he put one of the blood-filled tubes in his bag while holding the other. "Inspect. System alert, blood of Layla Munro. System alert, blood type A+. Quinn then looked at Layla and used his inspect skill once again. System alert name, Layla Munro. System alert race, human. System alert ability, telekinesis. System alert, HP 1212. System alert, blood type A+. It was as Quinn thought. When using the inspect skill on the blood, it only showed him what blood type it was and who it was from, just like the time at the assembly hall. But if the person was in front of him, it would reveal their ability, HP, and blood type. Some of the blood marks in the hall only revealed question marks, assuming that Quinn either had to have run into the person before or used the inspect skill on the person once before. Quinn looked at the test tube and gulped. He then pulled out the cork at the top and started sniffing the blood. "You're not going to drink it right here, are you?" Layla asked. "Why not? I need to know if it will make any changes." "I don't know. It feels kind of embarrassing. I can't explain." Quinn ignored Layla and looked at the blood again. The fragrance smelt quite sweet, which was different from how he remembered it before. Then suddenly, Quinn lifted the tube and drank the blood in one gulp, as if he was taking an alcoholic shot. As the blood ran down his throat, he felt a warm, tingling sensation through his body. The blood was also surprisingly sweet rather than metallic. It seemed like the race change had also changed his taste buds and sense of smell. "System alert. Your HP is already full." "System alert. The blood will have no effect." "System alert. Blood from this person has already been consumed." "System alert. No stat points will be given." Quinn was surprised to see the information he had been given. The blood last time seemed to have a healing effect on his body. Judging by the message, if Quinn was injured, Layla's blood would allow him to regain HP. But the second message is what interested him more. The system stated, because he had already consumed this blood before, that no stats would be given. This meant that as long as it was the blood of someone he hadn't drunk before, he would be able to get an extra stat point. Quinn smiled at the thought. Of course, this was only a theory of his, but Quinn wanted to test it out straight away. "I guess whatever you wanted to test out worked, judging by your creepy smile and all," Layla said. "If only there was someone else's blood I could test this on." Just then, the sound of two people entering the woods from the playground was heard. Quinn and Layla immediately ducked down and hid behind a tree. That's when they saw two students start to walk into the forest. "Now hand over your credits, otherwise I'll dig you your grave right here, and no one will ever find your body," a boy's voice said. Quinn immediately recognized the voice. It was Riley. It looked like he still hadn't learned his lesson and was still up to his old tricks. Quinn then went into his bag and took out the mask he had bought at the convenience store. Last time, he had let Riley go without taking any of his blood, and now he felt like it was such a waste. But this time, Quinn wouldn't let Riley go.